This week in PlayStation, we're talking about a bunch of games that just went unexclusive and came to the PlayStation, and we have some thoughts. We'll cover the PS Plus killing Oddworld Soulstorm sales, and Housemarque's Harry Krueger is here to talk about why Returnal is the developer's most important game. We'll cover all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. Welcome to the show, everybody. That's Blessing. That's Janet. I'm Greg. You know how it goes. And this, of course, is a show you can get over on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. Over on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, you could be a trog and watch us record it live, just like Banderas and Joshy G is, Cooper is. If you're watching live, of course, chime in the chat so I can get you into the show and have you be part of that. Just like Eric Miller will be taking a task very soon, but we will get to that eventually. Of course, on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, you get the show ad-free. You get it with the exclusive post show we do, and you can get it all the time right there, whenever you want it. There, I'm loose today. I'm loose. The nuts and bolts are loose today. I feel like I have an intro to show in quite some time. It's been a week. If that was enough for you, you have no bucks to toss our way, though. No big deal. Of course, you can support Kinda Funny over on the Epic Game Store with the creator code Kinda Funny. If you're not playing games on your PC, you're maybe like PlayStation, like me. Of course, when you play Fortnite, Rocket League, or Fall Guys, you can use the Kinda Funny creator code there too, since they're all epic and whatnot. Of course, if you don't want to go to the Patreon and get the show there, get it ad-free, get it with the post show, get it with the exclusive stuff, no big deal. You go to youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, roosterteeth.com, and podcast services around the globe each and every week to get a brand spanking new episode on Friday, our still brand new day. I know that Patreon producers Fargo Brady, Pranksky, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, First Responder ND, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, James Hastings, Casey's Andrew, and Anonymous all go there and get it and like it. Even though they're getting on a Patreon, they still go to YouTube and they thumbs it up and they go to Spotify and leave us rankings and do all that stuff. It's really, really helpful. Today we're brought to you by MeUndies and Maple Story, but I'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with a PSN message. Of course, this, ladies and gentlemen, is where you can write into patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames to be part of the show. Give us a thought starter. And usually, Blessing, Janet, I have one here. I have one that was written into Patreon. But right before we went live, in the chat, Eric Miller wrote this. Happy to be a trog here today. Started a new job that's non-retail and gives me the ability to be live. So Eric's first time being live with us. That's great. Then he says, love you all and love to Greg and Bless.
Wow. Well, I'm in the all, right? It's fine.
He did say all.
Yeah.
Do you really count that? I love to you all. Also love to Greg and Bless.
It definitely is giving the AMC, like, thank you to all of our, like, movie goers, and a special thanks to you. And if you're an AMC Stubs, you're like, move out of the way, motherfuckers. That's me. I run this company. So yeah, I just kind of feel like that. I feel like I don't have
love
Stubs.
To you all is specifically to the trogs,
I think so too, right? Like that's not like me or Barrett. Like we're just like we just happen to be here.
We're just a couple assholes over here just saying.
Yeah, we could be anyone. We could be no one. Who's to say?
Eric Miller trying to defend himself live in the chat and says in all caps, Janet, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to not include you. And then goes 3 exclamation marks. But I mean, can you believe that?
I can. It's not the first time I've been disrespected.
I feel like it's disingenuous. He's only saying that now because he's been called out.
Caught on it. Yeah. Now,
here's what I'd like to say. Janet is wearing camouflage. And so maybe he just didn't see Janet there.
This is written before we were live. It was also written before we revealed that, of course, the Harry Krueger interview we're going to have in PS I Love You XOXO was pre-recorded, and it's just me and Blessing. But there's no way Eric Miller could have known that.
Mm.
I'm so hurt that I just leave the whole process of that
you can't make it for topic of the show.
You know what? I'm going to need to recollect myself during this interview. I'll be back when I can.
Greg, I will say I am impressed with your ability to intro. You mentioned that the screws were loose, but like last week when you had to like dip out and had me and Janet host the show, I was nervous as hell because you changed we all changed the format of the show, right? But like you do the intro, we go into the actual like intro cinematic, and then when you do the whole spiel, and I had to figure that out on the fly. I had like an hour to figure out like what that was going to be for me, and like I was shaking in my boots when I did it. Like you do a good job hosting with it being like this new format.
The big thing about it is just to plow through it. Just ignore it. Like you say the word and it's wrong, and that like none of the verb tenses are correct. You just keep going. You know what I mean? Most of these people, what they're listening to this while they take a nice hit of heroin. They don't know what's happening. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
They're just out
my podcast.
Just digest nothing. No, everybody's UPS driver. I would tell you, I made that joke a long time ago about UPS drivers. They have an easy job or whatever, listen to the podcast while I have the hard job making the podcast. And I am shocked at how many real delivery drivers there are that listen to our podcast that come up and they're like, "You got it, Greg. You were right." I'm not even being facetious. They do it. It's crazy. I also appreciate it too, right as we were going, actually not even as we were going live. After I'd done the cold open and the intro video was playing, Blessing started asking questions about the bullet points. Like, what are you talking about? A bunch? He doesn't even know what the show's going to be. I love it. It's a fun time here. But for real, let's get to a question from patreon.com/kindafunnygames. This one comes from Ryan Powala Higgins, who writes in and says, the PS3/Xbox 360 era was famous for being a long console generation. Do you think that the PS5 era will be the longest console generation ever? Take care and stay safe, everyone. Ryan. Janet, you're making a face already.
I don't know. I mean, it's such a hard thing to gauge right now. Longest ever? That's gonna have, man. I'm going to say no. I feel like we have kind of ran into I think that was more of a rarity. I think at the current cadence, we're going to stay around. Like if it is, it's like a happenstance. Like I don't feel like I'm in this era now feeling like we're never going to leave. I think especially too, like generally things tend to flow at similar cadences across at least like the two platforms. Used to be the three, but like Nintendo's kind of off in Switch land and it got into its own timeline. But on that note, I feel like Xbox is set up in a way that's really convenient right now because they're like, look, we're just making better boxes. And like, it's like the same. It's like, you don't need it, but like, it's nice to have it. While PlayStation isn't on that in terms of how it's structured, like its games and its marketing, like it is moving forward, but at the same time, they kind of move at similar rates. But yeah, so I'm going to say no. I don't think it will be. But if it was, I wouldn't be mad at it just because I think too with PSVR 2, I don't think it adds longevity to the console, but it adds a layer of intrigue that I think can sustain in terms of like content or help sustain.
For argument's sake, remember everybody, PS3 came out in 2006, PlayStation 4 came out in 2013, so we're talking about 7 years there.
See, that's what I was going to call out, because like you're talking about 7 years there, and then the PS5 came out in 2020, right? That's like another 7 years. Like, I get that the 360 came out the year before, and so that then made that generation longer by a year. But if we're talking about PlayStation specifically, like the PS3 wasn't necessarily the longest. I think we have gotten into a good flow of like the 7-year cycle. That seems to be where we're at, especially with like console iterations and the PS4 Pro. I imagine that there will be an iteration of the PS5 somewhere halfway through. Sure. But for me personally, I'm not sold yet on this console generation being the longest console generation. I know another thing that goes into the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation being so long was the fact that there was a financial crisis. And so like in terms of like material and greenlight a new console, right? Like that made things weird a little bit. And there was also the argument of like, is PC going to take over? Like, is PC gaming going to overtake console gaming? Like, does console gaming have longevity beyond this? I think that went into that went into the conversation of, all right, like, is it for like PS4 and Xbox One, right? Like, do we see these consoles come out and then automatically fizzle out over time? I think PS5 and Xbox Series X have proved that like, no, consoles are here to stay. Like, these things are selling faster than ever, right? Like PS5 was, until the console shortage got in its way, was selling even faster than the PS4 was selling. And so I think with that, Sony is going to want to sell more of those, right? Like, we're going to get the iteration. And I think 100%. By the time we get 7 years out, like, they're going to want to sell more consoles with the PlayStation 6.
The iterations where it gets interesting, right? Because I think that's what, you nailed it. If we're comparing, not apples to oranges by any stretch of the imagination, but the PlayStation 4 Pro obviously gave PlayStation 4 longer legs to make it not feel obsolete or to make it feel like it was super behind the times in the way maybe a PS3 just, evolving into a George Foreman grill did. For PlayStation 5, yeah, like you figure you're in such an interesting spot where you still can't buy that console. You still can't go to the store right now and buy a PlayStation 5, which makes it obviously hard for people to get their hands on, but then also hard to sell developers on going full bore making just current gen games, right? This is something I've been talking about on our WWE streams of like, game's great. I'm having such a fun time with it, but goddamn, do I wish it was current gen only, because the load times on certain things and getting in there and the way it pulls creations from online and then uses stuff off of your hard drive, I would kill if it was designed just to be optimized for PlayStation 5. But it's not, and it won't be next year, and I doubt it'll be the year after that either, because we're talking about how long it's going to take the PlayStation 5 to really enter into that space and become the dominant PlayStation console. It's funny. our friend of the show, Timur Hussein from the number 5 Elden Ring website, GameSpot.com, he just returned to the office this week and put up a thing about having a PlayStation 4 Pro at his desk or whatever and being excited to set it up. And I was like, man, I haven't thought about a PlayStation 4 in I guess 2 years, right? It feels like at this point, and just the fact that I moved over to the PS5 and it just became so ubiquitous because, of course, I'm lucky enough to have my hands on it. But for what that means for the rest of the world and consumers, yeah, I wonder, of course, how long this console generation sticks around because, of course, they're having a slow start to it. But then also how long the PlayStation 5 in its current form factor stays around with all the shortages we've seen, right, for things. What are they doing to try to minimize that and get it into a smaller footprint and have it ready to go?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? Like, I look at the Nintendo Switch and I'm like, okay, we're gonna live in the Switch life cycle for a long time because the Switch is still selling and it's still killing it. And like, I think for the way this works, it is the thing of, hey, let's milk this for as long as we can, to get like the maximized sales. And as soon as we start to see things plateau, that means it's time for the next jump, right? I think it's that combined with like, I think the conversation might be what is next for technology in terms of what is the PlayStation 6 going to bring to the table, right? PS5 brought in the SSD for consoles. It brought in the ray tracing. It brought in like a number of things that we can point to and go, these are the bullet points of what makes the PS5 the PS5. What are going to be the bullet points of what makes the PS6 the PS6? And like, when are we going to be ready for that, right? Is that going to be 8K? Is that going to be like some type of technology that we're not aware of yet, right? And will that be ready by the time we get there?
Downloading the old PlayStation games.
Yeah,
that's going to be the big shtick.
I hope so, but I mean, it'll be more like getting rid of performance resolution, right? Like, just here's this thing running, and I know some games are able to do it or whatever. But
here's like 120 FPS, 8K, max fidelity, ray tracing, all in one.
And you figure that's got to be what it is, right? You got to chase what PCs are doing and what gives them the upper hand right now, which all these goddamn frames per second I hear about.
What would be your wish for like, or unless that is your wish, right? For like, what the next step is that would constitute a next gen console.
I mean, it's so hard to say.
Maybe I'm not like a cloud person, but I do feel like that's one of the next frontiers of like whoever can really master seamlessness and like the cloud elements of it. But yeah, I mean, it's tough because even with the PS5, obviously, like there's a lot that I'm thankful for technologically, like the idea of going back to my loud, slow PS4 is highly unappealing, but I feel like that's such a safe element and angle. I think what they've done with the DualSense has been really cool. So like, it's so tough to answer that question because like many consumers, I don't know what I want, but I'll know it if you show it to me. And I think even though the stuff with the DualSense is, not as like groundbreaking of a feature as, I think other things have been in console history, it's enough that it is notable to me. And I think the stylistic changes the general feel of like what it's like to play on PlayStation. I think it's a general improvement as well. So I guess stuff like that is sort of what I'm thinking of, like things that are quality of life stuff that wasn't necessarily bad on the PS5, but that I'm like, oh man, now that I'm at the PS6, like I can't imagine going back. I definitely want that game, the freaking quick resume. I want that now, honestly, but if I have to wait, even though it's going to be dated, but quick resume.
I really hope that's like an iteration thing, right? Like I hope I hope it's like an update or go for it.
Remember you saw the switcher on the PS5 home bar? You're like, oh man, they got it. And it's like, no, just
it's like, no, it's just there, right? Like for some reason they took out the feature where like they warn you that you're going to close another game and you just hop into the other game. It's like, oh, certainly this is for like a quick resume type feature. But yeah, I hope if that's not an update that comes with a PS5 Pro, because yeah, I'm right there with you, Janet. I think bringing up the DualSense is an interesting thing too, because I think that is kind of an underrated thing about PlayStation when we're talking about like what they offer when it comes to the next step in their next gen stuff, which is like, jumping into the PS5, I didn't realize that I was going to love the DualSense, right? And it's kind of this mix of, you have like the fidelity and like the high-end consoleness of like an Xbox / PlayStation, but then you also have that Nintendo like, hey, we're going to give you a weird thing and you're going to like it, right? Like Nintendo gave me the Joy-Con, I used the Joy-Con and I was like, I like this except for when it drifts. And like PlayStation does the same thing where they are like, yo, we're going to give you a console that has SSD, that has all the bells and whistles you want, but then also we're going to hand you something that is like a bit left field, and once you get your hands on it, you're probably going to like it. Maybe there's some things about it that you don't like. Maybe you're a Snowback Mike. Maybe, you don't like the cards or whatever it is, right? But for the most part,
Mike's just mad because his console doesn't have games. All right, don't worry about it.
Exactly.
He's also just mad because his controllers still have to take AA batteries.
What the fuck? Why does Xbox hate the environment? I'll never know.
That's a really good point. Yeah, they do not like the environment at all. But yeah, like when it comes to the PS6, I am looking forward to the things that I'm not necessarily looking forward to. Like tell me what it is that I want. Tell me what it is about the experience that's gonna like
It's 4D.
blow me away. You say it's 3D?
It's 4D. Like water
gonna
and
come with
air
a chair?
just shoots out at you. Yeah.
I'm still not
Where's
sold on the
that?
4D experience.
No, I'm definitely not. It's super weird. But you tell me about that patent for like the weird PlayStation pet friend that sits with you and cries when you're sad. Like I don't know what that is, but like maybe that's
like
PS6.
the patent that where your controller will read how much you sweat and then like react based on that.
It's like the inverse of that Mad Catz controller that had the air conditioner in it. It's like that big fan that you could just turn on.
The last thing I'll say about like the question of do you think the PS5 era will be the longest console generation? I don't think so, but I could see by the time we get to the PlayStation 6, cloud gaming taking off enough to where console iteration doesn't come as swiftly because so much processing is going on in the cloud and we don't need the actual console hardware as much as we did. Like if we get to the point, let's say 10 years from now, where you get a PlayStation dongle and the dongle is just streaming and you're playing games with crazy fidelity, crazy shit happening because all the processing is going on somewhere in California on a server farm that is running what like in my mind is like PlayStation 10 level graphics, then I think that could phase out like a PlayStation 6 through 7, right? Or 6 through whatever being this like rapid iteration of all right, next console, pro console, next console. Like if we can get it to where it's all cloud, then theoretically we don't necessarily need console generations, but also that's a far off iRobot type feature, I think.
PS6, they get the cloud stuff down and like remote play is genuinely really good. And it's so good that they give you like a controller for, well, they can't really do that because everyone has different phones, but something like that, like maybe a mount or something for your like smartphone, because I've used a little bit of the remote play and when it works well, it's like the best thing in the world, but that's like such a small sliver of time. But like being able to see it and it just be kind of out of focus is like a little bit frustrating, honestly. So I think that might be the next big angle in terms of PlayStation.
To dial back to the question from Ryan, I could see this being the longest generation, but very similar to how you just called out the PlayStation 4 generation was long as well. I think it would just be hidden by the upgrades and things that go that way of like what the PlayStation 5 Pro and PlayStation 5 Slim and whatever the hell else you would do that are these little incremental things that keep you going and get you closer to whatever graphic resolution PCs are running. And that's why you wouldn't notice the problem, right? Because again, with the near instant loading and stuff instant loading on first party games, right, on PlayStation Studios games, like that's what they're selling and that's what they're pushing. And if they can keep doing that, I don't see there wouldn't be as many reasons to be like, oh well, this feels old or this feels slow or whatever it's going to be. But we'll have to wait and see, I guess, on that one. For now, we turn our show to topic of the show. Eric Miller, of course, has offended Janet Garcia, so she's going to take a time out. Yep. And while she does that, we are going to welcome Harry Krueger, the game director on Returnal from Housemarque, to the show to talk all about Returnal's success and its future. As I live and breathe, Harry Krueger. Welcome to the show, Harry.
Hey guys, how's it going? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for penciling us in. You guys are a big deal now. 4 BAFTAs last week. How does that feel?
It's pretty incredible, man. Super proud of what we accomplished with the team, and I think it still hasn't really sunk in that it happened. It's a pretty big deal.
Well, I love the long tail on Returnal, right? I feel like it feels like Returnal's been out forever, but the way Game Awards work, you are still winning them, right? And again, if you missed it, ladies and gentlemen, last week at the BAFTAs, Returnal won Audio Achievement, Best Music, Best Performer in a Leading Role, and then Best Game. Best Game, Harry.
Best game. Yeah,
you are game
incredible.
Director. Did you guys think going into the BAFTAs you had a shot at this, that you had a shot at Best Game?
Well, we thought there was a big enough possibility that I did prepare a speech for it,
Nice.
Of course, just in case. But I think how much can you ever expect something like this, right?
Sure.
So we were hoping for it, but it almost felt like too good to be true. But then it happened. We were in disbelief. Some of us still are to some degree.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. Yeah, really, really big moment for us and the team. And once again, I just want to congratulate the rest of the team who might be listening in too for just doing such an incredible job on Returnal. It's super proud.
Well, it's funny you bring up the rest of the team listening in. Like, I watched the BAFTAs. I watched you guys go up there and win I didn't see you give a speech. You said you had a speech prepared.
I had a speech prepared. Ilari, our CEO, actually was there. He spoke on my behalf. I couldn't make it, unfortunately. But yeah, I was there in spirit.
Yeah, I'm sure you were.
From
I'm sure
afar.
you were.
Were those any of those awards that you're excited about in particular, aside from best game, which obviously is the big one? But like, I know for me when I played Return, I was like, man, this game sounds so good. I want to see this game win sound design awards. Were there any of those where you're like, yes, like we got the recognition that we deserved for this one?
Yeah, audio is definitely a big one. I think the Loic and the guys over at Creative Arts London, they did something really special with like the 3D audio and the haptics. The whole package felt really, really fresh and innovative. And yeah, I did feel going in that that would be kind of a really special thing for us to win, of course. Music was another big win. We worked, of course, with Hacks and Cloak, or Bobby Krillick, as his real name is. And yeah, that was a pretty big thing for us as well. I think it was the first time that we collaborated with an artist of that caliber. And yeah, I think he managed to bring something really fresh to Returnal too. So we're pretty excited about those. We were nominated for 9 BAFTAs total, so we were actually leading the nominations. Yeah, and of course it would have been awesome to win the others too. I mean, there was best design, artistic achievement as well. We were all pretty excited about winning, having even a shot at all of those, and even just being nominated, of course, is quite a massive accomplishment by itself. But
Did you guys know going into award season that like you guys were gonna get this type of recognition? I feel like Returnal is one of those games that it came out toward the beginning of last year and like had great reception, right? We all loved it, but like last year is one of those years where there are so many great games that I think by the time you get to the end of the year, you don't really know what's going to get recognition and what might get forgotten by that time or might not get the recognition it deserves. Going in, were you like, all right, like let's see how many different categories Returnal gets mentioned in?
yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. I mean, with Returnal, we created it's a bit of an unconventional experience, and it is pretty demanding, both in terms of gameplay and story. And yeah, we weren't really sure, of course, when we were releasing the game, how strongly it would resonate. But of course, it was massive to see it popping up as nominations, and then of course winning some awards as well. So definitely not something that we expected per se, but yeah, something that we were hoping for. Absolutely.
In that vein, I have a question for you, Harry, and it's actually, I think it's one question, but I want your perspective before the release and then after the release of Returnal. And the question is Returnal Housemarque's most important game, like of all time that Housemarque's ever had? Because I think, infamously, right, before the release of Returnal, before we knew what Returnal was, before Returnal was maybe even a real concept, there was the infamous blog post of Arcade is Dead, right? Where you guys, of course, were Housemarque. And, I'm old as dirt and I've covered you guys on PlayStation forever, right? Where I just sit here and I remember you can go listen to old podcast Beyonds, right? And have us talk about Super Stardust HD, Super Stardust Portable, Dead Nation. The list goes on and on and on. And like so synonymous with what Housemarque was doing in that digital space. But then to put up Arcade is Dead, Next Machina didn't perform the way we wanted it to. We're going to have to go in a different direction. But then, I think it was a year later, right? Another blog post that was kind of a little bit ambiguous that was like, all right, you know what? We're working on something else with a new partner and this is going to be really exciting. And that would become Returnal and where it would go. When you're working on Returnal and getting ready to reveal it or just working on it, is there a feel in the audience that this is like a make or break thing for what Housemarque wants to be?
Yeah, lots of things to cover there, I guess. So there was
go ahead and
that
talk for 30
infamous-
minutes now. We'll kick back.
Sure, but there was definitely the big statement that Arcade is dead, and I think that was more just something from a business perspective, right? So it was we're making fairly small games with definitely not a small budget for the scope of games we were making, and clearly Next Machina was a most critically acclaimed title at the time, and it didn't perform as well as we would have hoped for. And I think it was a pretty bold statement to make, but from a creative perspective, I must say I never fully kind of aligned with that. So if you tell me that the arcade is dead, I'll just always answer with "Long live the arcade." Right?
Sure. Well, that's the other thing too. If we're taking a sidebar here, like Returnal feels in so many ways like a Housemarque arcade game, right? Where it is, okay, one more run, right? One more quarter. Okay, no, I can do this. That's how the game feels.
Absolutely, yeah. That was very much a conscious decision to take that those distilled arcade sensibilities, the arcade spirit in many ways, and just give it a new package that, of course, is bigger production values, more immersive, and hopefully more appealing to a bigger audience as well.
For sure.
And it was basically our shot at the stars. And to answer your original question, you said if this was the most important game for Housemarque. I think in many ways, I think that's true. This was definitely something that felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity for us. So we're given the chance to make effectively what was a dream project for many of us. Like we just allowed ourselves to think of what would be the game that we'd make if we didn't have to compromise on anything. And we started collecting ideas about roguelikes, about cosmic horror, about bullet hell, about all of these things. And we just put them in this melting pot. And we were very, very fortunate that Sony and XDev were incredibly supportive and trusted in this vision and really supported us every step of the way. But we really needed to live up to that promise, right? To that expectation. This was I don't know if I could say a make it or break it opportunity for us. That might be dramatizing it a bit, but it definitely felt like a big opportunity that we wanted to make the most of. And it was it was a big challenge for us. I mean, it was the first time we're making a game of this scope. So even just if you can imagine something like Alienation, taking that and creating a third-person version of that by itself would have been already a pretty big undertaking for a team not versed in making big games. But in addition to that, we wanted to add like procedurally generated content for the first time. We also wanted to tell a story for the first time that we'd never done before. And all of this while targeting an entirely new level of quality and fidelity. So, yeah,
a brand new platform, untested brand new platform, no problem.
New platform with and a relatively new engine for us. We're working with Unreal Engine 4, and that was it was a learning experience in many ways. We're growing the team, and we had to adapt as we were going. I mean, the metaphor I like to make is that we took a leap of faith and we had to build our wings while we were falling, effectively.
In that same vein, can you talk about how Returnal's changed Housemarque? Like you talk about working in UA4, you talk about doing a narrative, you talk about it being a different scope. How has Housemarque needed to change since working on Returnal? And like with that, like do you guys see yourselves going for that same thing in the future in terms of narrative, in terms of, again, like Unreal Engine, in terms of all these things?
I think growing the team was definitely one of the big opportunities and challenges, of course, that we had with this. So it was the first time that we built, for example, a narrative team, and we expanded our design team, our art team, our tech team, everyone towards this big endeavor. And now, thinking of the future, I mean, we do want to keep building on our strengths, and we do feel like the narrative, as one example, is one of the newfound strengths that we adopted with Returnal. So I would expect us to continue building on that and dreaming through that prism for the future as well.
And so jumping off that, right, the other side of my question is Returnal Housemarque's most important game. There's the pre-Returnal and then the post-Returnal. And one of the things I would, put out there for why I think Returnal is your most important game is the fact that this was your guys' coming out party. Like, again, as a student of PlayStation, as somebody who's covered these games for so long, I've been banging the drum about how great these games are. Do we even have to mention how good Resogun is? No, everybody knows it. But it was that thing of you had to be a dialed-in PlayStation fan. You had to be checking the PSN. You had to be listening to a podcast to really, I think, beyond that edge of knowing what that was. Whereas now, 4 BAFTAs, a litany of other Game Awards, Golden Joysticks, nominations out the wazoo, you do it. Like, the jig is up. Everyone knows Housemarque is special, and everybody knows Returnal is special. Like, do you and the team feel that pressure? Do you feel like there's more eyes on you than ever, or is it still just business as usual, but taking what was successful with Returnal and worrying about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that in many ways we do still feel that hunger to create and that drive to keep doing the best possible game that we can make for the future as well. And I don't think success has changed us, if we want to simplify it like that a bit. I don't think we've really felt that it's been that big of a success to some degree. Maybe it's because of the pandemic and this whole weird situation that's been going on for the last a couple of years, right? But yeah, I think it's definitely been a really positive kind of validation for all the hard work and the love that we poured into Returnal, and it gives us a lot of confidence to just kind of continue pushing for even bigger and better games for the future, right?
For sure.
But yeah, don't really feel that much the pressure of expectations, so to speak, yet. I think we managed to carve out our own unique voice with Returnal that in many ways defied kind of expectations, but at the same time delivered on what maybe some of our diehard fans were hoping to get from us.
Sure.
And yeah, really looking forward to building more on that in the future again.
So then talk to me about the Ascension update. Of course, that just drops, adds co-op, adds the Tower of Sisyphus. Was the plan always to come back and do an update to Returnal, or was it based on the success of it?
Yeah, so leading up towards the release of Returnal, we were focusing all our resources on just making the most polished and stable game, of course, for launch. And there were some ideas that we wanted to explore earlier, but we just didn't have the bandwidth. I mean, as mentioned earlier, we were kind of adapting as we went, we were learning as we went, and we did have to make a few compromises along the way as well. But after the game was out, we thought it was a good opportunity to look at how to support it further. And yeah, the multiplayer was something, it was a seed that we had planted a while ago. I mean, there was already some foundational work done to support a prospective multiplayer component there. And yeah, we felt that would be a great way to, again, bring more players in and also act a bit of as a bit of a, I don't know, an equalizer or even like a difficulty thing as well. That
There's a lot of talk about difficulty. We'll get to it later.
yeah. It's interesting to see the multiplayer through that perspective as well, though. That if you get stuck somewhere, now you actually have the opportunity to just invite a buddy over and go 2-on-1 for a boss and just maybe get over that big obstacle that you've been struggling with, for example. But it was also about just making this, expanding this idea of connecting player stories. And with the roguelike generation, the randomized content, there is really unique experiences there, and sharing those with a friend, I think, is quite a fun experience in many ways. But yeah, the tower. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Keep going.
I was going to switch gears and talk about the Tower of Sisyphus a bit, but
do you want to talk about co-op less, or you?
I don't know. I was actually going to talk about the Tower of Sisyphus because like one of my favorite things of opening up the game after the DLC was out was walking out of my ship and seeing the door that was there the whole time. That like every single run of Returnal, I would look up at that door and go, man, I wonder what that is. Like, I'm sure I'm going to unlock an ability or unlock some kind of like, grappling hook or something that's going to take me there. And then eventually not getting it and being like, well, I guess I'm just lost. I just don't have it. And then realizing that the DLC dropped and that's what that is, right? Like, was the idea that you guys always wanted to tease Tower of Sisyphus?
I think there's a bit of that there for sure. We wanted to tease something. I think maybe at the time we weren't really sure that it was going to take the form of the Tower of Sisyphus. But yeah, I think generally a lot of decisions we made in Returnal were about just teasing the players, making them ask questions, making the world feel bigger and more interesting inside the players' minds in many ways. And yeah, that was one way of teasing it for sure. But yeah, as mentioned, we weren't really sure what form that would take. I think that came after launch. And we were just exploring some different ideas of what kind of ways we could expand the world of Atropos. And yeah, of course, drawing inspiration from our more classic arcade heritage once again, as we were saying before with Greg. Yeah, we thought of this endless mode effectively. So just see how far you can get, see how high score you can get with a traditional kind of multiplier systems that we've had in our previous games, and yeah, just create a bit of that different flavor for the game that brings some asymmetry rather than just adding another biome and another more of the same. So we wanted to give something more familiar for our more arcade kind of hardcore fans as well, but also, of course, expand the mythos of Atropos.
Did
as
that
well.
idea come post launch? Because playing through the Tower of Sisyphus, it feels so Housemarque in the way that it is arcadey, it is endless, it is you're racking up the score, it is I'm trying to get through this room as fast as possible. It feels so at its core Housemarque. Was that a thing that you guys always had in the back of your minds as something you wanted to add into Returnal, or was it post launch where you guys were like, we want to do more? We want what else can we do with this thing?
Yeah, I think maybe a bit of both. I mean, in some ways, always at the back of my mind, I had this idea of just a more pure kind of arcade version of Returnal. And yeah, I guess after the launch, we just solidified that into a more focused concept, and the Tower of Sisyphus was born.
Can I ask about balancing in Tower Sisyphus? Because like going through when the DLC dropped, I started playing co-op with Andy Cortez on the team, and it was a good reminder of how difficult Returnal is in that main path. Like it took us many tries to even get past that first initial boss in Returnal, and it was a great reminder of like, man, yeah, this game was tough when I first played it, but then going through Tower of Sisyphus, I found that the first phase, which for folks who might not have played Tower of Sisyphus, right, like it goes phase by phase. There's 20 rooms per phase. I got to room 20 and I was like, man, this is awesome. This is a breeze. I'm actually having a laid back time. And then I get to like toward the end of phase 2 and then I start struggling. I'm sure the higher and higher I go, the more and more the struggle is going to be. Did you guys want to make Tower of Sisyphus something that players could ease themselves into a bit more? Or, what was the idea of balancing it compared to balancing the main Returnal run?
Yeah, I think there we wanted to make it easy to get into and hard to master. I think that's the general kind of arcade mantra. So yeah, the beginning is intentionally a little bit more laid back. You just have a bit more opportunities to build up your weapons, just define your run in many ways. But after that, it does very steeply start getting increasingly harder. And that was another conscious choice because we also wanted the average kind of play session to be fairly digestible as well. I mean, if you have a less steep difficulty curve, then you could end up just even like an average skilled player could end up playing for like 4 or 5 hours straight, and then it can be really exhausting. So we really wanted to just make it feel more a bit shorter, more digestible, and just keep players being pulled in for more sessions over and over. And just like the main game as well, the Tower of Sisyphus also evolves across multiple sessions as well. So there are layers to the story that I don't want to speak too openly about to not spoil anything. But yeah, there are some tidbits of story that are drip fed to the players as you play and replay the mode. So it is designed around multiple playthroughs and the concept of dying many, many times in order to achieve your goals, of course.
I know you guys don't want to talk deeper about story because you don't want to spoil it, but what was the thought process behind adding in story? That was one of the things that did surprise me as well, where I got there and immediately I was hit by the Returnal style, like, okay, here's some mystery, here's what's going on, here's like visions, all this stuff, right? Like, what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, I think the idea was just to expand maybe the mystery of Atropos and explore a bit more about the past of Celine, and just give the players a bit more information about the story without necessarily giving too many definitive answers either. So just expanding the mystery a little bit more. So we weren't necessarily going for something that you can think of as either, a continuation of the main story or a prequel. It is kind of like intertwined with the main story of Returnal, just as an extra parallel kind of layer to that in a way. And that was a very conscious decision because we didn't want to kind of force a feeling of finality there. And we also didn't want to make it feel too much like, okay, this is just kind of like a basic prequel. So there is some overlap and interplay between the story segments you find in the main game and in the tower as well. And it is all driven towards it's all created with this idea of supporting mystery and supporting multiple interpretations and ultimately embracing ambiguity as well for what all of this mystery of Atropos means for Celine.
See, this is why you hire a narrative team. Listen to the way you just talked about this. You know what I mean? We're talking about all these other games you guys have made, all these other arcade things. Get there, go shooty, you get a high score or whatever. You're over there talking about the mystery and what's going on in the past and all that. Like, have you had that chance? Because I mean, we haven't talked about, of course, your body of work, Harry. Right, like lead programmer on Resogun, game director on Next Machina. Like you've been. This is an old bio I found on you online. You've been there. What? It's got to be getting close to 15 years at Housemarque. Is that right?
It's 13 years now.
I'm getting close. All right, yeah, I'm getting close.
Yeah, close
so
enough.
like, do you have that moment of like? Again, I'm driving home this narrative. It probably will be the headline, the most important game or whatever. But do you have that chance in that? Do you take that breath and look at the team now and look at what you guys are and be like, man, like we're on another level. Like I think the mere fact you would go in there and do the tower and be like, all right, cool. It could just be arcade, but what if we do more story? What if we talk about Celine's backstory?
Oh yeah, it's been a big shift for us. It's been a hell of a ride to get here. But definitely, yeah. I mean, when I first joined Housemarque, this was 13 years ago. I mean, I think the company was about 20, 25 people back then. And this was working on 2 projects at the same time back then, right? So now we're, close to maybe 90 people plus. And yeah, with Returnal, we're all working on one game, of course. So it's an order of magnitude kind of bigger in terms of scope and ambition. And yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in telling powerful stories and, just creating things that resonate emotionally with players. I think just with our previous games, we just found ways to do that through climactic kind of explosive action and just try to weave a little bit of that satisfying closure with the endings and the music and all of these kind of emotional cues. But yeah, this was the first time that we got a chance to really dive into a more human, more fleshed out, more complex and layered story with Returnal. And it definitely wasn't, it wasn't just a simple story for us of, the hero goes out there to save the world against the big evil. It was a very layered, deep story of trauma and regret and all of these human, relatable elements to some degree. So we kind of just dove straight into the deep end of the pool for our first narrative endeavor.
Thank God you did.
Really happy with how it played out. And as mentioned, when we started out, it was just an exercise in dreaming. I mean, I was just collecting different things that resonated with me, from Lovecraftian horror, and Lynchian horror, and roguelike things, and mystery, and thrillers, horror, sci-fi, dark sci-fi. And they're just pooling them all together in a melting pot. And in the beginning, it wasn't really clear exactly what ultimate form that would take, but there were just some feelings that I was chasing with that, And it became super clear very early on that we definitely need to grow our narrative team, which was at 0 at the time, so it needed to grow infinitely. And yeah, I think we did create something really, really special there. Really, really proud of what we accomplished with Gregory Loudon, our narrative director, and the rest of our narrative team too. So yeah, super happy.
Greg mentions that Returnal is one of, if not the most important game for Housemarque. How do you feel Returnal lands in terms of PlayStation? Because the PS5 comes out. You look at the slate of year 1 PS5 games, and Returnal is right there alongside Ratchet and Clank, alongside Miles Morales. And I think for many people now, when they think of iconic PlayStation characters, or at least PlayStation characters that you would see on a PlayStation banner, right? You have Celine standing there next to Rivet, next to Miles Morales, next to Spider-Man, next to all these iconic characters. For you, as somebody who is leading Housemarque in this, what are your thoughts when you see Celine standing next to these other characters that people view as these huge PlayStation big characters?
Oh, it's surreal. It's a huge honor to be placed alongside the greats in many ways. And of course, we have had a long-standing relationship with Sony that's been fantastic ever since the Super Stardust HD days, which was effectively a launch window title of the PlayStation 3. Then, of course, with Resogun, we were at the launch for the PlayStation 4. And in many ways, we have had this opportunity to be there at the forefront of every new PlayStation launch since the PS3. And yeah, this was once again a fantastic opportunity for us to be there in that spotlight in that space where there aren't that many titles, and it's a new platform, new possibilities with like the haptics, the 3D audio. We do have a history of really enjoying like tinkering with any new tech that comes our way, so we're always pretty excited to jump into all of these new possibilities. And of course, I must say the fast loading as well with the SSD. I think that's a really big game changer, especially for a game where you're intended to keep dying and keep loading like over and over. Keeping the experience streamlined and really smooth has been, really,
at the
really
risk
positive for the experience.
at the risk of sounding like a E3 PlayStation 5 demo, right? But also the haptic feedback, right? The way the
Oh, the
controller
haptics.
felt in Returnal was amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the guys did a fantastic job with that, and even just the simple things of hearing like or feeling like the raindrops when you're outside. So I think it's always kind of tempting to just go full on, just crank everything up to 13. But I think there is so much fidelity in the haptics that a lot of the nuances really come across, and it's a new level of immersion. It's awesome.
So in that same vein, is there like a delight or even a pressure in like being a part of PlayStation Studios now, where you are standing next to studios like Naughty Dog or Gorilla or Sony Santa Monica and are putting out PlayStation first party titles in that same vein? Like, does that excite you? Does that like make you nervous? Like, what does that do for Housemarque in the way that you view your own games?
It's definitely exciting. I think that's the first feeling that I'd identify there. It's been really great just being a part of the PlayStation family, and even just reaching out, collaborating, talking with other studios that closely in the Sony family has been great. And yeah, I don't know if we feel necessarily that much. I mean, pressure. We always do feel some pressure to make the best possible game. I mean, regardless of circumstances, and of course, we are looking forward to our future titles, kind of delivering on that Sony first party quality expectation as well. So definitely excited to see what the future brings.
So jump into this, and it's going to sound like my most leading question, but I swear I have history to back it up, and it's not. We're talking about the pressure or the relief or whatever of being a PlayStation first party. I would have to imagine that looking at your lineage of the games you guys have made before and how you make games, that there would be some level of relief to have PlayStation above you because they believe in you and they're going to support what you want to do. Because again, to look back, what I've always found so fascinating about Housemarque, right, is that for the most part, and because Stardust had a couple different versions, right? Super Stardust HD, Portable, and then Delta. Like there was different Super Stardust, but for the most part, your games are always different, right? Where it's not that you're doing Dead Nation and then Dead Nation 2 and then a Dead Nation spinoff and then back to this. And I think that when you guys talked about Arcade is Dead and it seemed like, you were pivoting the company a bit, it seemed like it sounded like it was all business driven. Like it was, how do we compete in the current market space? How do we, make our development studio make games that people want to buy? And of course, a lot of places that means sequelizing. It means that Returnal hit, and now there's going to be a Returnal 2, and there's going to be a Returnal plushie, and then we're going to have the Returnal and like that could still happen. PlayStation could still merchandise, but for you guys as creators who just want to go and, like you said, and how you came up with the idea of Returnal, sit there and find out what resonates with you. Does it feel like PlayStation, being a PlayStation studio, opens that up more, where you don't have to sit there and be like, oh well, Returnal was big, maybe we do something different with that, or now you can just go make whatever? And I'm not asking if you're making a Returnal 2, if you're making a new IP. I'm just saying though, is there, like, with how you've made games before, does that really fit into your DNA?
Yeah, I think in many ways it only strengthens our resolve and kind of the situation that we're in. We've had a long-standing relationship with Sony where I think we've always felt this. It's been mutually beneficial. I think they've supported us every step of the way back from the Super Stardust days, and of course so many other games we built together. And I think because of that familiarity, going first party now hasn't really, I guess, changed the way that we think that much. It does feel like a fairly familiar space to be in, and working with people that we know and trust, and they also believe in our vision as well. So yeah, I think in many ways the creative freedom that we those sensibilities that we had, that we aspired to maintain in the past, I think, yeah, we just really want to push them even further now. You know, it's just an opportunity to take everything and crank it up to 13.
Okay. Okay.
Do you still see Housemarque's identity as being the arcade gameplay studio, right? Like going back to the blog post of like arcade is dead and that transition, but then coming back and making Returnal and making this big budget thing that still has the heart of Housemarque games, right? Like again, looking at other PlayStation studios, I look at Bluepoint and I think, wow, these guys are incredible at remakes and remasters and bringing something old and making it new again, right? I look at Gorilla and I'm like, man, they can make an open world, right? I look at Naughty Dog and I'm like, man, they can make a narrative. Does Housemarque have an identity that you view Housemarque as, or are you in a place where you're expanding that and like trying to play with that idea still?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think over the last 13 years that I've been at Housemarque, at least, and following our trajectory, I mean, there are some very similar kind of themes and values that we just naturally gravitate towards, and you just keep seeing in all of our games. And I think, yeah, we could summarize that as the arcade spirit, or that kind of unapologetically video gamey kind of vibe that we have, the uncompromising focus on gameplay, and making sure that the controls are really intimate and invisible, and high octane action, and of course a really high explosion per second ratio, right? And yeah, all of those things. So yeah, I mean, those are still very appealing to us. I do think that we will continue finding them appealing in the future, and we'll continue wanting to build on them. And yeah, I think that is pretty much what I would see as the identity of Housemarque. That that irreverent, almost video gamey kind of fun factor, but now dressed with this bigger, more immersive, more high fidelity kind of production values and world building and narrative as well.
All right, so stick with me then, Harry. Everything you just said about what Housemarque is to you is exactly what I think Housemarque is. Were you surprised with Returnal about the conversation at launch about difficulty? Because when you look at the games you've made before, I would put out there that I thought Resogun was a hard game. You know what I mean? Like Resogun was difficult, and it was because it was an arcade game, right? It's meant to get my quarter. It's meant to kill me. It's meant to be, oh man, if I would have just gone left instead of right, I gotta. But something about the way Returnal looked, I felt hid its arcade roots in so many ways. It hid what you were trying to do, that when people jumped in and thought, okay, I play third person shooters, I know what I'm getting into. I've played roguelikes before. They weren't expecting to be beaten and say, oh, one more quarter. Were you surprised, or am I overplaying the way people reacted to difficulty?
Yeah, hard to say if I was really surprised. I mean, we did release the game knowing that it is going to be a challenging experience. There was even a disclaimer there when you launched the game the first time, that Returnal is designed to be a challenging experience, and be careful where you save and leave off the game and so on. So yeah, it wasn't such a big surprise, but yeah, I think because it was, as you said, in a maybe more approachable package, or more mainstream appeal package, in a way that felt a bit more cinematic, a bit more like that. Maybe it did hide its arcade roots in some degree. But I think it's not only the arcade, I think it was also the roguelike sensibilities that made it into that as well. Because with roguelike, you do want to have this describable variation for each run. And the best way for that variation to manifest is through multiple runs, by definition. So in a way, the game was designed around expecting the player to die very frequently, and then you shift the rules on them, and that's what creates that high engagement as well. And it was interesting because I did feel like, unlike a traditional kind of game with a fixed difficulty, being a roguelike meant that there existed a pressure valve for players. So you have one run, things don't really go your way. You take that one gamble that doesn't pay off,
Yeah.
And then...
Oh, I know that well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you get killed for it, and then the next time you say, okay, well, I'll try again. And now you enter in the first room, you find your favorite weapon. The second room, you get like a health upgrade. And all of a sudden, it feels like all of the stars are aligning, and this is going to be your run. And I think that's a really special feeling to tune into as well. Just getting that harmony, where everything is just coming together. And I think that embracing that kind of the flirtation with despair is what makes triumph all the more all the more sweeter at the end as well when you do achieve.
As we were watching this footage, right? Like Barry had gameplay footage pulled up. Like repeatedly, every time I look at Returnal, I'm pretty blown away by like the visuals, the lighting, all that stuff, right? And you mentioned earlier, Harry, that like the SSD is a game changer. For you now, putting out Returnal as your first PS5 title and it being a PS5 exclusive thing, are there things that you realized or learned as you were developing Returnal for PS5 that you want to take into your next game in terms of things that the PS5 can do or things that you want to do technologically for your next game?
Yeah, I think there the streaming. So the SSD actually did allow us to stream a large amount of high quality data. And for a roguelike, that of course there's every time that you run the game, there's a different configuration of content and rooms. And yeah, having that kind of raw speed of just streaming in so much content just allowed us to make a really smooth experience there as well. But aside from that, of course, we were excited to tinker with everything. I think with the 3D audio, once we learned about that immediately became something we're drawn into as well. Not only for the narrative, kind of like the immersion and like the atmospheric moments, but even something like gameplay awareness. Because when you have like this 3D space and you have lots of projectiles coming in, you have enemies like above and below you and so on, having 3D audio at high fidelity can really help you actually locate different enemies and incoming threats a lot more intuitively as well. So it does help the sense of place quite a bit too. But yeah, always exciting to explore these kind of new possibilities with new hardware.
Talk to me a little bit about, after it came out, one of the main conversations was the difficulty, but then also the fact that I have a life. I can't pause my run in the middle of the game and then leave my PlayStation in rest mode and come back because what if it got updated or what if the power went out or blah, blah, blah. Like, was that you talked about earlier in the interview, lead up to actually launching Returnal was all hands on deck. Let's make the most polished game we can. And then after the fact is where you thought about DLC and the tower and all that. In the lead up, had you been thinking about this mid save feature, or was it another one that drops and you're like, oh man, we didn't even think about that in the way we were testing the game?
It was something on our radar, I think, before we launched as well. But again, due to time and our focus being elsewhere, we had to just pick our battles. I think that's a pretty common theme. And yeah, we're really happy to be able to release the suspend and resume feature fairly soon after launch, and that was combined with photo mode as well. By the way, that was another thing. We did have that back in Resogun. Sorry, if you remember.
Yeah,
and
another game where it's such a relaxing game. The first thing I'm thinking of is let's take a photo. That's what I mean. I have so many seconds to think about the next thing that's going to attack me or kill me. Yeah, I definitely want to pause. I definitely want to do this. And I guess then, in terms of reaction and post-launch, where did you come down on some of the accessibility stuff that came up, right? Where people were talking about like Steve Saylor, the blind gamer, right? A friend of the show who's been on PS I Love You a bunch and a whole bunch of kind of funny stuff. He did a review of Returnal and was like, there's a whole bunch of Returnal accessibility options, which are great, but they could have done more for some of Steve's disabilities and how he played. How do you walk that line of making a game that is the vision you have, an arcade game that's going to eat your quarters, versus like making something that you could tone up or down the difficulty, or figure out a way to go through it your own way to finish off the bosses?
Yeah, that's definitely always going to be an interesting challenge to find that
for sure,
that sweet spot. And yeah, I think we can always do more. Could always add more support for different ways to play the game and different control methods and so on. And yeah, I think when it comes to difficulty, I think it is a question of what kind of experience you are having with Returnal as well. So I think in many ways the story and the gameplay are very inseparate in Returnal. So even like the character like Celine, she is talking about dying over and over and how this is like insurmountable odds and she can't keep going on. And there is like this descent into madness that is happening purely because of the challenges she's facing,
sure.
and her challenges are the players' challenges as well. And in many ways, it feels like if you were allowed to just power through a boss without any challenge or just go from like A, B, C narrative points, it almost feels like that would create a bit of dissonance there, where the game is kind of telling you that, oh, this is really challenging and you've overcome these obstacles, but in a way you haven't had that expected friction with the game that much. So that's always going to be a difficult line to walk, though, to be fair. And yeah, it's something that we'll need to just keep in mind. I mean, with our previous games, we did have difficulty options. Resogun had like 5 different options, and so did Next Machina and many of other games. But this time we did feel like with the roguelike elements, that did act as a bit of a pressure valve, and it did allow even like those runs that did end up in failure ultimately, or felt like they were a bit disadvantaged. The next time you could actually you could have the odds in your favor.
For sure. And I think, you talk about it's something to look at. I think that's exactly the way to take it. I think obviously, you know me, I'm just a chucklehead. I talk about the games. I don't make the games. So like, I can only imagine like sitting there and trying to come up with what you want your game to be and how that goes out. Number one, you do that and you launch your vision of the world, but then 2, to get the feedback and look at it, be like, okay, well, how does this inform the next decision? Where does this go, right? Like, what is the difference between a Returnal and a Celeste, right? Where a Celeste, you can slow everything down and turn everything off and go into this God mode. Like, how do you balance narrative versus challenge there? And like, I think it's a thing a lot of people are wrestling with and thinking about. And so I think even the fact that you're thinking about it shows a good sign. The fact that like you're open to that, because again, I can only imagine pouring your heart and soul into something like this and then putting it out there and then having to take the feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the pretty, and everything else. No matter how many awards you get, there are still people out there who hate your game, because that is just how video games and opinions work, and it sucks.
Yeah, even for a game that like
Absolutely.
Returnal, you mentioned like the struggle with it, right? And like I think a big part of it too is the more you die, the more you're collecting voice logs, and the more you are getting information about the game, right? And so like, if you're able to power through it in like 1 or 2 runs, then you've missed out on all this narrative that like was supposed to be delivered to you, because you're expected to keep dying and discovering new rooms and picking up new things. Like, I think there's a lot of creativity. I've been loving seeing how other developers go about it, in terms of like Hades adding in a god mode, right? Like other developers figuring out like what is it about their game that like they can implement. But I also know that it's a very tough thing to figure out when it is you're trying to launch a new idea, right? Like a third person, big budget AAA roguelike game, like something that's not been done a lot of times. I know it's always a difficult thing, but yeah, it's very interesting to see like the challenge that brings forth, and how different developers decide how to solve it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was a great point as well, Blessing, that I mean, the game was designed around the expectation that players would be dying, and much like the tower that we mentioned with the base game as well, the more you die, the more the game opens up to you in many ways. So you get new items at the beginning from the Chronos device, and you get new house sequences, you get new audio logs, new items. The game does evolve with you the more you die. It acknowledges your struggle in many ways. And I think if you did actually finish through the entire first act, for example, the first 3 biomes just on your first life, you wouldn't actually get to see all of the narrative moments that the first act has to offer. So that would probably be a more confusing experience as well for some players.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, now that you put out Returnal, right, a game that is difficult, a game that for so many people, they were like, man, like I know Greg Miller was like, yo, for now this is too difficult, I'm gonna wait for co-op or for some other features before I go back and completely
I
finish
believe that was
this thing.
between reviews, Blessing. That was the thing, if
No, you
memory
just couldn't
serves.
finish it. We
No,
all
that's
know the
not true.
truth.
Oh God. Okay, fine.
But
whatever.
like now that you put out this game, right? And now we've seen other games like, you know, Elden Ring just came out. Elden Ring is a very difficult game, but it's also now probably one of the highest selling games of the year, if not of the last few years. Is there a level of comfortability you have now in terms of if you wanted to make your next game a hard game, or if you wanted to do more content for Eternal that was and even like, you know, higher difficulty, right? Like, is that a thing that you feel like you're able to do now that you see that people are willing to put up with that difficulty, or at least grind through and fight against that difficulty?
In many ways, it's encouraging, or not encouraging, but it's great to see that you know, these difficult games do have an audience as well, and that audience is actually quite large, it seems too. So that does give us some validation in a way for approaching creating games that way too. I think that, you know, for all of our games, just going back to that arcade heritage and that easy to pick up, hard to master. I mean, there's always going to be a really high skill ceiling, and I think there will always be some design intent of creating these challenges that should feel insurmountable at the beginning, and then when you overcome them, you get that really big sense of satisfaction. And yeah, I'm happy to see more difficult games kind of resonating with mainstream audiences as well. Of course.
Well, I think that's what's interesting, right? Is like expanding that palette. You know, what can games be, and like, can you sit? What is the vision for it, right? I think when you sit there and we talk to you about Returnal through the lens of what Housemarque is, how you came up, the kind of games and the arcade experiences, and then let alone the fact that dying is so critical to it, like it gets to a different point. Because that was the thing when I was playing Returnal, and I talked about it a lot on this show and other shows are kind of funny, where it was when I would play and die. It was this weird thing where I didn't feel like I was failing. It was that I learned a new weapon, I learned a new thing. I got deeper into the house and I got my astronaut. Like there was I felt like I was gaining XP for like just what I thought of the game, not in game, not for anything I was upgrading in game, but for knowing, okay, this enemy is weak if I do that, or if I go this way, or this is when I get to this room and I see this kind of layout, I should be doing X, Y, and Z. Like it was about learning the systems of the game over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the trademark traits of roguelike games in general, that because the content keeps shuffling around under your feet in many times, it is more about mastering the mechanics of the game. So you can rely a bit less on that rote memorization for just like some ABC sequences. There is familiarity, of course, that you can recognize over multiple runs, but even in those familiar spaces, you can have very unfamiliar encounters. So the game really demands players to master its fundamental mechanics and just be able to react to all of the different things that the game throws at you. Really.
Yeah. Well, you made something really special with Returnal. You deserve all these awards. You keep winning, Harry.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Blessing, any closing questions, thoughts, anything?
I guess I have a question, but I don't want to lead too much. Like all the questions I have now are about like the feature, and I know there's not much you can really talk about when it comes to the feature. Like, I guess my one question I might throw out there would be like, you know, we talk about like again the story of Returnal, and you know, I mentioned Celine as a character and how Celine now exists in the PlayStation ethos alongside again the Ratchets, the Spider-Man, all that stuff, right? For what Returnal is as a narrative and as a story, and who Celine is as a character, like, do you envision there being a future for Celine in terms of, and it doesn't even have to be like a Returnal 2 or like even more DLC, right? Like I'm talking about like PlayStation productions, like a movie, or like any sort of like any other way to interact with that character. Because I imagine for you guys, that's a character that means a lot. Do you think that there is possibilities of a future for Celine, or is that something that still is up in the air?
Yeah, I think that's something still up in the air, and yeah, about the future of Celine, we can just leave that to players' imaginations as well. But yeah, nothing to announce at this point, of course. But
I mean, he brings up a good point. Don't forget, everybody, Housemarque already has a movie made about them. The name of the game. Go watch the documentary.
Absolutely.
The name of the game. Go out there, watch it. Amazon Prime, I think. Still, you can go out and get it there. Check it out there. But if you already see, Harry, you already have the movie hookups. All right. A lot of people would say, well, PlayStation, they got their own movie division now. Don't worry about it. You go over here to these New Dawn people that I'm seeing right now, whoever they are. You go over and you say, you know what? We're gonna make a Celine movie out there, and it's just entire prequel, just before any of the crazy stuff happens. PR hates.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
That is incredible.
Harry, what about you? Did we not ask you? Is there something you want to talk about with Returnal while you have the audience, or you just want to keep drinking your Coke and celebrating your many awards?
Is that Coke? I've been trying to figure out what that was the whole time.
Oh, that's a Coke bottle. Yeah, you've been drinking a Coke, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of whiskey here.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought
the
it was
other
whiskey.
one's Coke. You have a Coke. Don't act like you don't have a Coke bottle over there.
I do have a Coke bottle as well. Yes.
Oh, I see. I'll just focus on whiskey.
Combo.
If it wasn't 9 a.m.
No,
over here, I'd join you.
Blessing, you had an easy day. Well, we're gonna just do P.S. I love you after later today with Janet. No big deal.
I mean, should I bring the whiskey? Is that what you want me to do?
Don't worry about it. But yeah, Harry, anything you want to close out on?
Not really. I think we covered a lot of things. Really enjoyed the chat, guys. So thanks once again for having me here. And yeah, it's just been really awesome to see how much Returnal has resonated with critics and with players, of course, all over. I mean, the amount of support and positive feedback we've received for Returnal has been just overwhelming, really. And it really strengthens our resolve. It really makes us feel that we created something special, something with lasting appeal, hopefully. Even with the Ascension update, the multiplayer, and the Tower Sisyphus, hopefully even more kind of replay value and more reasons for players to go back into Returnal. And yeah, really excited about the future. I mean, this is the beginning of a brave new chapter for Housemarque. And yeah, it feels like Returnal was just the beginning of that. And the future is something very bright, and looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Man, us too, for sure. Don't worry about that. But of course, you can still play Returnal right now. You can go and get the Ascension update right now. It's all there for you. Barrett puts it very well on Twitter. He goes, man, I need to finish Lego Star Wars Persona 4 Arena. I'm replaying Bully, and I'm deep into MLB The Show. Then he goes, also I should re-download Returnal. And that's exactly where I'm at too. Like, man, I got to get into this update. I need to really get out there and get into it. It's just like, man, what a special game. Harry, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, P.S. I love you. XOXO continues. Let's bring Janet back in. And we're back. But before we get back into the show, let me tell you about patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. Over on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, you can write in to be part of the show. You can get the show ad-free. You can get the show at the post show we do. You can be watching live, like Bander SN is, Jay Peterson is, and Eric Miller, the trader, are. If you aren't on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, though, I got bad news for you. Let's have a word from our sponsor.
Shout out to MapleStory for sponsoring this episode. After 17 years of rich MMO gameplay wrapped in a unique 2D side-scroller, MapleStory is ready to proudly lean into its cute pixelated aesthetic. The aggressively cute campaign aims to showcase the unexpected juxtaposition of cuddly smiley characters with rich multi-layered MMO gameplay. The campaign focuses on telling a story of immense character customization, a vast array of weapons and mounts to choose from, a seemingly endless horizon of lands to explore and battle, all while dealing huge amounts of damage to monsters of all shapes and sizes. I know a lot of people out there love MapleStory, so hey, come check out this armed and adorable campaign. This is your world. With over 40 classes and thousands of cosmetic customization options, you can play how you want, and there's just so much good stuff. 18 years of content, no signs of slowing, means you'll never get bored. You can go to maplestory.nexon.net. That's maplestory.nexon.net for more, or you can just click the link in the description. This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. I love MeUndies. You guys have heard me talk about MeUndies for years at this point. I'm always wearing the MeUndies shirt, the MeUndies lounge pants, the MeUndies undies, the MeUndies socks. I can go on and on and on. If MeUndies putting out a product, chances are Tim Geddes is wearing them. The MeUndies membership is literally designed to make your life easier with free shipping and returns on every order, savings on virtually everything they make, exclusive sales, and early access to their newest stuff. There's kind of no reason not to join. Get super soft undies, bralettes, or socks shipped directly to your door and live a more comfortable life, knowing you always have what you need at your fingertips when you step out of the shower. MeUndies has a great offer for all of you. Any first-time purchasers, you can get 15% off. For a limited time, if you sign up for their free-to-join MeUndies membership, you can get 25% off your first membership item. To get 25% off your first membership item or 15% off your first order and 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to MeUndies.com/KindaFunny. That's MeUndies.com/KindaFunny.
All right, now it's time for This Week in PlayStation. Blessing, what have you cultivated for the biggest stories in PlayStation this week?
I want to start off by asking, what can Kingdom Hearts 4 do to pull you in? I asked that's because, of course, earlier this week, Kingdom Hearts 4 was announced. It was announced on at 4 a.m. on a Sunday, and I saw it right before going to bed.
Prime Kingdom Hearts time.
Prime Kingdom Hearts time, 4 a.m. on a Sunday, the time where everybody's working, especially if you're a reporter. I'm going to read, speaking of reporters, from Adam Bankhurst at IGN, and I want to circle back to the question. Kingdom Hearts 4 and Kingdom Hearts Missing Link were officially announced at the series' 28th anniversary event. While no platforms or release date / window for Kingdom Hearts 4 was revealed, we do get a glimpse of Sora in the new world of Quadratum, a quick look at gameplay, and an ending tease complete with Donald and Goofy. Square Enix has also confirmed that the game is in early development. I'm going to hop out of the IGN article and hop into a VGC article from Jordan Midler, where Jordan writes that the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer appears to tease a Star Wars crossover. Part of a Star Wars vehicle has seemingly been spotted hiding in the reveal trailer for Kingdom Hearts 4. During the portion of the Kingdom Hearts 4 reveal trailer that cuts to a forest environment, what looks like the foot of an AT-ST walker can be seen in the background. This has led many to speculate that the environment in the game could be Endor from Return of the Jedi, which would introduce Star Wars to the Disney crossover franchise for the first time. Now, I almost didn't bring up Kingdom Hearts 4 because I know none of us here are necessarily Kingdom Hearts 4 or Kingdom Hearts huge fans, right? I loved Kingdom Hearts 1, but trying to follow up on the series after that didn't necessarily stick hard with me. Greg, I don't think you're a Kingdom Hearts person. I don't know Janet's history with Kingdom Hearts. But I do bring it up for that specific question, actually, because I think for me, reading the Star Wars stuff with Kingdom Hearts 4 brought me back to the things that I did love about Kingdom Hearts 1 when I was playing it. And the thing that I like in terms of an idea of Kingdom Hearts, right? The crossovers with the Disney stuff, the crossovers with Mickey Mouse, Aladdin, going to all these different worlds, hanging out with these characters that I love. That was always a thing that I really adored about playing the game. And even when I jump into other Kingdom Hearts games, when I try them out, I am damn, man, it feels good to be hanging out with these childhood characters that activate this burst of nostalgia for me. Seeing this tease of Star Wars Return of the Jedi made me go, damn, do I want to play Kingdom Hearts 4? I think I want to play Kingdom Hearts 4. And I wanted to actually come to you guys and ask, for you guys who are not necessarily Kingdom Hearts people in the way that a Tim Geddes is, or an Imran Khan is, or a Cameron Hawkins is, what could Kingdom Hearts 4 do to pull you guys in?
You know what's funny about this is I have a really uninteresting answer, which is, just exist. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna try it at least. I really, with the few exceptions. 3? No, okay. No. I'm just gonna.
Why? So why would this one pull you in?
Because it's out. I try to play almost everything that comes out that's of major conversation, with a few exceptions. We talked about Bless and I, Final Fantasy Origin, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. There you go. That's the name. It's only because I have another thing pulled up that has the name already listed there. But that game I wasn't interested in playing just because since I didn't have that interest level, sometimes I do dial back for code requests and stuff, kind of inside baseball things where I'm I'm the least likely person to get to this or be interested, and I want to give space for other people on whatever teams I'm involved in to get there. So sometimes I wait on code for that reason, and then occasionally with Final Fantasy Origin, the kind of general consensus was so negative that I'm well, I think it'd be more of a waste of my time to try this because it's so skewed negative that I'm better off waiting for something more neutral to positive to come out from something that I'm already not that familiar with or into, because otherwise I feel I'm kind of setting myself for failure otherwise. So yeah, I would try this out. There is a world too where I play through the first one. My boyfriend loves Kingdom Hearts and he really wants me to try the first game. But I don't know if I'm doing that yet because I'm just going to see how it lands for me and my Twitch community on what they want to see me play. But yeah, I'll try it. Generally, one thing that's always really impressed me with Kingdom Hearts is just the visuals and the spectacle of it. And I do have some attachment to some of the IP that they're pulling on. So I'm sure, it seems like it'd be cool. I know it's not, it hasn't always landed in some ways. Kingdom Hearts 3, definitely different opinions depending on who you talk to. But it seems like it has interesting combat. Like, let's check it out and see what happens. Like, and I think it's kind of nice sometimes to come from a place of more neutrality, where the only thing I know about Kingdom Hearts is that everyone who likes it tells me never to play it. So they hate the thing, but also themselves. It's like there's a weird baggage there. I don't expect to be blown away by Kingdom Hearts 4, but if it comes out, like, more likely than not, like, if I had to bet, money on it, I would say that I'd at least spend some time playing it. Maybe that'll only be like 2 hours, but that's 2 more hours than I currently have with Kingdom Hearts. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I don't see, what could they do to get me interested in it? I don't think anything. And I guess the one exception in this, this wouldn't even really work, I don't think, but like, I guess Marvel, if they're bringing Star Wars in, they could bring Marvel stuff in, right? But it's the thing of, there's a boatload of Marvel games I don't touch. I don't play Strike Force on my phone. I don't put, there's much, it's not just putting Marvel in something's going to get me. It's the fact that, like, Kingdom Hearts has always been just anchored in a genre and then a world that I just don't jive with. That just isn't my jam, right? Like, I've never been the Disney guy. Like, growing up, I liked it fine and, like, enjoyed Disney World, but like, oh, it's Toy Story, oh, it's this, it's Mickey, it's Donald, it's I'm like, that's great, but that's not, I don't have the nostalgia for that I want to sit down and play that. Like, that I want to be a part of that world. And then playing it, I remember, Chant, the reason I'm like, I was like, but you didn't play Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, I remember, 2018 Judges Week, right? Being in LA and like Square giving me the demo for that. And I played it there so that I could talk about it. And like, Tim, of course, was like enraptured with it, as he should be. He's a fan of, the series and Disney. And I played it. I was like, okay, cool. And like, now I rack my brain and I can't even tell you what the combat was about it. Like, I just don't remember anything being a standout that even playing that version, I was like, oh, I need to play this eventually. It's just not for me. I think it's, the fact that it's the kind of game it is. And then of course it's the world it is. It's just, no. And then, of course, it being the 4th installment of it, like, I really do feel like this has been such a joke, obviously, what is going on with this story and so on and so forth. And I remember previewing Birth by Sleep for PSP back in the day, too. And it was the same thing of just like, cool, I'm glad this is there. And I totally get wanting to exist in these universes. That's what, you're a fan of and stuff. But it's just like, not being a fan of those, I wouldn't see why I would even get pulled into it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that, like, I'm looking forward to, in the way that, like, I think the thing that has hindered me from getting into Kingdom Hearts in the modern day, I guess, has been more so the idea that the story is so far along and there is so much stuff that it has gone on, and there are so many games to play through and so many stories to experience in Kingdom Hearts, that I was never, when I looked at Kingdom Hearts 3, I was like, all right, cool, let me catch up. Let me play Kingdom Hearts 1.5 plus 2.5 HD Remix. And I started in and I played some of Rechain of Memories, and I played some of Kingdom Hearts. I played like 8 hours of Kingdom Hearts 2, and I was just like, man, it's the unfortunate thing of an old game feeling old, and like me playing this game that originally came out on PS2 and being like, man, I know I loved this gameplay when I was 10 years old playing it, but now that I'm much older than 10 years old and trying to play the same thing, it's just not hitting the same way, let alone like the references, let alone like the scenes where Mickey Mouse would come through in like a cape and do like Yoda style, like cut shadows down. Like, I watched that as an adult.
Awesome.
Like, in the moment, I like, it should have been awesome, but I was laughing. I was like, oh, this is hilarious. And like, I know, like, that's not me knocking it necessarily, but that is me being like, man, if I was in a certain state of mind, if I was younger, right, and I played Kingdom Hearts 2, as a grown man, I'm sure Kingdom Hearts 2 would be one of my favorite games of all time. But trying to go back to it, it is that double whammy of gameplay-wise, it feeling old, and then story-wise, it leading into things that aren't hitting as much for me, right? And like, part of that is how kiddie it feels at times, and then the other part of it, I think, is how much is going on in the story and how, like, quote unquote convoluted it is. I know people will throw that out, play Metal Gear Solid, but I think it's a different type of convoluted in terms of like it not necessarily being weird science, it being weird magic, and it being like, hey, it is this story of friendship is power, and it is the emotion of it, and it is like Organization 13, and also like Roxas is Sora, but also he's this character, and like, there's so much of that in Kingdom Hearts that is mixed with, I think, just the experiential like emotion aspect of it that I couldn't necessarily connect with years later, trying to jump in through these HD remakes that made me go, by the time Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, made me go, well, I just don't have the stuff. I don't have the context. I'm not going to play Kingdom Hearts 3 and ruin it for me because I didn't know what happened. Kingdom Hearts 4, I think what I'm going to do is just jump into it, not even worry about that. Maybe I'll try Kingdom Hearts 2 again. Maybe I'll see about that. But at this point, I don't want to use like all the baggage of Kingdom Hearts to keep me from experiencing something that maybe I could enjoy regardless, right? Like, I'm sure on a story level, me not playing those other games is going to bring it back for me quite a bit in terms of like me understanding what's going on. But I think when I look at Kingdom Hearts and when I think about the things that I want to experience about the game, I just want to hang out and like get into the Kingdom Hearts combat and like occasionally meet up with Mickey Mouse and like go through that process. I don't necessarily want all of like the deep cuts in the organizations. Like I'm down to be confused for that stuff and acknowledge that like, yo, that stuff isn't for me, but I am enjoying the experience. That's what I hope to get out of it, because this trailer I think looks really cool. I love the art style. I love how much it looks almost more like a Final Fantasy VII remake in terms of like the fidelity of the characters and the world and all that stuff. And like I love the giant Heartless walking through the city. Everything about that seems really cool. And even me and Tim had a conversation about it earlier in the week on KFGD, because Tim, of course, is a Kingdom Hearts fan. I recommend anybody that is a Kingdom Hearts fan listening to this is getting frustrated, right? Go listen to that KFGD, because Tim nerded out about it for like half an hour, and we had a really good talk about like, hey, what does this mean? What does it mean for other stuff? Like, you know, what does Star Wars mean for you and all this stuff, right? And like hearing Tim talk about it and hearing him talk about, I think it was called like Verum Rex or whatever, and that's its relationship with Final Fantasy 13 Versus, which is a game that got announced and then canceled and then turned into Final Fantasy 15. Like Tim taking me on that journey made me go, damn, this sounds wild. This sounds hype as hell. I wish I could experience it on the same level. But regardless, I do think the game looks cool. And I want to try it out for that. And so I'm personally somewhat looking forward to Kingdom Hearts 4.
Well, you get it in 5-6 short years.
On the
At
PlayStation
least.
6 launch title.
PlayStation 6 launch title. What's going to be the feature that it takes advantage of with the PlayStation 6?
But it's also coming to PlayStation 5 still, so like, I don't know.
It's cross-gen. Let's hop in to our next this week in PlayStation. Should Sony be more invested in the metaverse? I asked this because earlier this week it was written by Marie D'Alessandri over at GamesIndustry.biz that Sony has invested in Epic. Epic Games has raised $2 billion in a funding round. The funds came from existing investors, with Sony and Kirkby, the investment company behind Lego, each contributing $1 billion. The investment will go towards advancing, quote, the company's vision to build the metaverse and support its continued growth, end quote, Epic said in the announcement. Sweeney commented, quote, as we reimagine the future of entertainment and play, we need partners who share our vision. We have found this in our partnership with Sony and Kirkby. This investment will accelerate our work to build the metaverse and create spaces where players can have fun with friends, brands can build creative and immersive experiences, and creators can build a community and thrive, end quote. Greg, Janet, what do you think of Sony's investment here? Do you think this is an investment for Sony in the metaverse specifically?
I mean, fucking hate the word metaverse. That's where I'll start. All right, I will fucking say that I hate this goddamn fucking word metaverse. Janet, back to you.
I was like starting from a somewhat similar point of right now the metaverse phrase.
Poison.
I get what it's going for, but it's still very like hollow and no pun intended, but it's not really like something that, you know, you can really look. Yeah, obviously it's funny that's not tangible because it's obviously a very intangible thing or concept.
Yeah, literally not tangible.
But I feel like it's sort of become this term to be like a catch-all for like you're online and like, is that VR? Is it like AR? Is it like an NFT somehow? Like what, you know, it's kind of just been used for, there's a lot going on here. It's kind of been used for everything and nothing. So it's, you know, I can't really, I guess to that extent, comment on like what I think Sony should do or what I want in terms of like me being a Sony fan or a player. I do think like what comes to mind hearing about like Sony and thinking about the metaverse and like being online and online gaming is like, again, they're pushed towards online gaming. And I think of like stuff like Jade Raymond's project and how that was, at least so far, the only thing we know about it is that's going to have some type of like social, like sharing online feature. Again, not saying those two are necessarily related, but these are just things that like come to mind when I think of what does like Sony and then by extension, like PlayStation look like with in that kind of like sphere. But again, it's just so vague that I'm like, you know, they're investing money in Epic. Epic's a very successful company. That's probably going to shake out fine, but I don't really know. It's hard to get invested or not invested in the metaverse when it's such a random catch-all for just like floating through space and time. Like, am I in the metaverse when I'm just playing a game? Am I in the metaverse if I make something and I put it online? Like, where is, you know, how is this different than VR? Is it? Like, there's just so up in the air. And
that's the thing I like to step back from, right, is that metaverse gets used so much, right? And we saw Barrett with the great Phantom Thieves Facebook Mark Zuckerberg video. That obviously Meta and their stupid shit they're doing. To say metaverse, I think, is too broad. To look at Epic makes more sense. And so should Sony be invested in Epic? And I would say yes, hands down. Of course they should. Epic is doing so much cool shit over there, whether it is Unreal 5, whether it is their own PC gaming store, whether it is Fortnite. And I think Fortnite is where it gets interesting. You see Epic continuing to buy different games and developers, right, to bring in things like Fall Guys, to bring in things and put them underneath the Epic umbrella, which opens up the tools, but then also opens up the pocketbook and abilities to do this. And I think what's interesting here is the Tim Sweeney comment: as we reimagine the future of entertainment and play, we need partners who share our vision. Again, you can look to Fortnite and what they've done of playing Tenet, right? Christopher Nolan film, or just the trailer, I forget, debuting it in Fortnite. The Ariana Grande concerts in Fortnite, Travis Scott in Fortnite. The fact that they're doing things on a grand scale, and if we want to even move away from the entertainment crossovers, the fact that they're doing things like the giant end of season events, beginning of season events that are X million people showing up or watching or playing and doing all these crazy things that, you know, we don't traditionally see in a video game, but that they're doing in Fortnite and using that, right? And so for them to then, you know, double down on this and keep going with the Tim Sweeney quote, this investment will accelerate our work to build the metaverse and create spaces where players can have fun with their friends, brands can build creative and immersive experiences, and creators can build a community and thrive. Yes, that is a lot of press release jargon,
like lip service,
fucking word salad stuff. But again, it's not the fact that Sweeney is saying it. I think it gives you enough of a history with how Epic has done it that you can look to it and be like, sure. A lot of other brands would say this in a fucking press release, and you'd roll your eyes and be like, what? None of that's ever going to be. What does that mean? For them to talk about, you know, create spaces where players can have fun with their friends, of course, Fortnite, and then the other games and experiences or modes, as you know, Fortnite now has no build mode. Brands can build creative and immersive experiences. Yes, you traditionally you don't give a shit about what a brand is building you, but there have been cool activations in Fortnite, right? I would even go as far as like, you know, should Sony be invested in the metaverse? Maybe Sony should have never given up on PlayStation Home. Not really, but that was ahead of its time, right? And as a Ghostbusters fan, I loved when I got to go into PlayStation Home and buy my Ghostbusters outfit and have the firehouse set up for my apartment and all that jazz that you could go do in it. That's a nice thing. And then to get to, and creators can build a community and thrive. That's a fascinating one that I really do. Thank you very much, Barry. This is a clutch PlayStation Home poll. That is an interesting one that I really do. I would right now put a.
This is literally the
sorry, if you're watching the video
future
version,
they're promising.
This PlayStation Home trailer is incredible.
And what I love is that it looks so much better than Facebook's stupid shit.
And it's funny because it's like
and it's a decade old.
We kind of crap on PlayStation Home and stuff, but like this is the same kind of trailer that other companies
Yes.
are making literally today for their dumb meta shit.
Yeah,
Like they're
PlayStation
killing
Home
it with
again
the
ahead of
cuts
its time. You know what I mean? And like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like the most fleshed out, like thought out, perfect thing by any stretch of the
But
imagination.
nothing ever is when it launches either.
Yeah.
Again,
And it had
I
a
don't know why this is
dedicated
becoming a
audience.
PlayStation Home, bring back PlayStation Home segment. But yeah, like nothing's ever, you know, perfect when it's first starting out. It's a lot of working out like the kinks.
Yo,
mean,
I'm
you
not
look
gonna lie.
at-
This
what does
this
this look
trailer
like?
is making
GTA Online.
PlayStation Home look fire.
It looks like GTA Online.
Yeah. No, this looks fantastic, and I'm with you guys. I do hear the term metaverse, and I roll my eyes real hard, especially when it comes from companies like Facebook, or sorry, Meta, and other similar companies, because it sounds like, in the way they talk about it, it sounds like, to me, it's like, oh, so you've not played a video game. Like, video games have been doing the things that you are talking about, right? Like, we're looking at PlayStation Home, which literally came out almost a decade ago, and it's funny because I look at the Epic thing and what Sweeney's talking about with Epic, and out of all of the companies that are doing it, out of all the organizations that are going about like the idea with metaverse and what they want to do with it, Epic is the one that I believe the most. Not necessarily to the point where I think it's going to change the world or it's going to be the super innovative thing or anything, but in terms of the application of it and how like Epic is already doing it. Like Greg, you mentioned all the concerts, you mentioned the trailer premieres, you mentioned all the stuff that Epic is already doing that I think lends to the idea of, hey, yeah, let's create a social space for people to hang out. Let's create tools for people to create. Epic is a company that, of course, doesn't only have Fortnite, but they also have Unreal Engine, which I'm sure can play a big part of it in this, right?
For
They
sure.
also recently acquired Bandcamp, which helps artists sell music back and forth, right? Like, go for it.
No, please go. I'm sorry.
But yeah, like there are so many resources that Epic has that lends to the idea of this end goal of creating spaces that people can hang out in. Like Fortnite already being that, I think Epic at the very least has their mind in the right place of what they actually want to do with it practically. Like if I want this idea in anybody's hands, or if I want anybody to get the money funded so they can go about this idea, I think it would be Epic or a video game company.
What I want to call out again, is this end statement from Sweeney. Creators can build a community and thrive. I'm talking a bit out my ass, but eventually, and I don't know when, but eventually, Epic is going to make a move and try to make a play to be a YouTube. And I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know what that means. But Blessing, you bring up Bandcamp, I bring up this quote, I bring up the fact that you have seen like a podcast or a show in Fortnite before. I would bet money that they are working on some kind of thing, whether it's a Fortnite mode, a special or whatever, or maybe I'm thinking too small. I could even see them like one day announcing that they've acquired somebody like KindaFunny. And I'm not saying KindaFunny. We're not, or if you want to come talk to me, Tim Sweeney, about numbers, come talk. But we're not negotiating.
You're not in the same way that like
what's your budget,
YouTube would get Ninja or whatever.
Right. I could see them doing those kind of acquisitions that they're bringing in this platform that is, you show up with your avatar, your skin from Fortnite or whatever, and you can go there. And like, on top of that, you pay a, ticket price at the door to get into the concert, to get into the live podcast, to get into whatever they're doing with the creators, to watch the exclusive video that then goes back to the creator. But then also, obviously, whatever it is, 12% or 8% or whatever it is that they run on the Epic Store, that's the big deal for developers. Or Unreal Store, that goes to Epic, and that's another monetization thing.
They already have Fortnite creator mode, right? I think that is like the very start of what that is. I think that continues to grow, and I'm right there with you. That I think like. And the way that Dreams exists, and Dreams is a space for people to create and share their content, right? Like I can see Epic going about that similar idea, but doing it in a way bigger way. That is hey, you can make a game and now you can sell it. I guess they already do that literally because they're Epic and they have the Epic Game Store and the Unreal Engine. But I think they can take that and bring it to the user level of a similar thing of cool. Now do music, now do assets, now do like you can make anything and build a community with it or sell it or like build a hangout space and hang out with your friends in VR, right? Like I think Epic legitimately has all of the tools to make it happen, and I think right now they're just in the process of like funding it and connecting all those tools in a way that is seamless
100%.
and in a way that makes this all work. And like I'm curious to see what they do with it, right? Like like the idea of the metaverse makes me roll my eyes mainly because of the way that people talk about it as this over the top like next step in everything. I don't think it's that
married in it.
Yeah, like, and granted, like people might get married in it, right? Like I'm sure people have gotten married in video games before.
Well, lots of time. Yeah, that was why it was a dumb thing when they said that.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, I don't look at it as that, but I do think that Epic might have something here, right? And with how successful Fortnite is already, and how people already use Fortnite as a hangout space and as a space just to socialize in, they might already be successful with it. Like they just need to greenlight it, and then all of a sudden, boom! Like they already have the user base there. Enough about that.
It's going to be interesting. Mark my words. They're going to do something like that.
Last news story for this week in PlayStation. Greg, Janet, how did it go wrong for Oddworld? I asked this because this last week, there was an article that went up. Oddworld Soulstorm's director claims that their PS Plus deal was, quote, devastating. This is Rebecca Smith at PlayStation Lifestyle. And I'm jumping kind of in the middle of their article. This is basically a story being told by Lauren Lanning. With cost rising, Oddworld Inhabitants was looking for extra financial help. Sony offered the studio a deal to put Oddworld Soulstorm on PS Plus as a free game for 1 month in exchange for an undisclosed fixed sum of money. At this point, the game was due to come out in January 2021, when supply issues would have meant there weren't many PS5 consoles in the hands of gamers. As studio head Lauren Lanning told Xbox Expansion Pass, the developer estimated that they would sell a maximum of 100,000 units at launch, although 50,000 was a more probable number. The money they would receive from the deal would more than the money they would receive from the deal was more than they would make through those sales. The problem started soon after the deal was signed. The COVID-19 pandemic forced the studio to work from home, and this delayed the game to a new release date in April 2021. This also gave 3 extra months for PS5 consoles to enter the market. Therefore, more players owned them than previously estimated. The result was Oddworld Soulstorm became the most downloaded game on the PS5 at close to 4 million copies. Pretty much all for free through PS Plus, something that was devastating for the studio. Lanning didn't detail how this affected future sales of the game on other platforms like Xbox One and Xbox Series X/S, but it is sure to have had some impact. Greg Miller, I want to hear from you.
Sure.
How did it go wrong for Oddworld Soulstorm?
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack with that question, right? I think in some ways, and of course, Lauren Lanning, friend of the show, friend of KindaFunny. He's been on a million things before. And I guess also I'm a voice I have a little voice thing in Soulstorm.
Don't worry. Me and Janet already went off on it, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to go off it too, because I feel like it's just not misplaced blame, but I think it's causation versus
Correlation
correlation
versus
versus causation, right? Where it's like, okay, Oddworld Soulstorm was downloaded 4 million times, or close to 4 million copies were downloaded, right? That's because, of course, it was free. And it was people were, and the article talks about the fact that, of course, there weren't 4 million PlayStations 5s available, but people who have PlayStation Plus download it like you download, hopefully, Janet, your PlayStation VR
I
games
downloaded
every
it.
so
I was
often.
part of the problem. I was part of the problem or solution. I don't know.
too
That's
You
what I'm
download
kidding.
all this stuff on the belief maybe you'll play it one day, or maybe you'll get a PlayStation 5 one day. That alone does not equate to 4 million sales. I don't think that was ever going to happen for Oddworld. I always thought that, and again, like, I love Lauren, don't get me wrong, but like when they were like, we're doing Oddworld Soulstorm, and like even I guess getting to know Lauren through KindaFunny, really, it was this thing of like, there's really that big of an Oddworld fan base, huh? Because Oddworld was definitely one of those games that I remember seeing the ads for and all that kind of stuff in, my video game magazines and this, that, and the other, but it was never my jam. So I never thought there was this huge Oddworld audience. And there is a passionate Oddworld audience, but I don't think they're 4 million strong. And I don't think Oddworld Soulstorm would have found the extra 3 million of them. Like, you look at Metacritic, it's got a 66. We talk about video games professionally, and we get to guest on a lot of people's shows. We listen to a lot of people's shows. People tweet at us about their games all the time. I do not hear about Oddworld Soulstorm at all. And we're a PlayStation podcast, and I'm a PlayStation pundit or whatever. Like, it's just not something that comes up. I don't think you have to look at it and go, oh yeah, 4 million. That would have easily, if they would have not been on PlayStation Plus, they would have sold 4 million or 2 million or anything like that. I just don't think that would have been the case at all. Am I wrong?
No, like I 100% agree, right? Just anecdotally, in the same way that you said it, right? Like, I've not heard anybody talk about Oddworld Soulstorm in the last year, and I think that's, like, when you're talking about 4 million downloaded, like, if that did equate to people actively using the game, like active users,
Yeah.
I think you would have heard more people like share stories about it, share thoughts about it. Like, the causality versus causation thing, or
Correlation versus causation.
Correlation versus
thank
causation.
You, teacher. Thank you, teacher Garcia, Miss Garcia.
Yeah, let's I do think finish.
I do think that's a big part of it. If this game came out off of PS Plus, like, I do think that you probably would have seen those estimated sales, like, even if you saw those numbers, right? Like, I think the bigger thing to like look at in terms of like, what is PS Plus's effect on this game, right? I'm fascinated to see like the effects of a release of Oddworld Soulstorm versus the effects of a release like Maquette that was also on PS Plus.
Sure.
Maybe that same month, maybe the month after. But came out and was like a good game. I played it. Like, I know a couple other people that played it. And I think that game had a little bit more conversation around it, right? Like, I would like to hear from those devs. Like, did that hit the way they wanted it to hit? Did it sell the way they wanted it to sell post PS Plus? I would like to hear from Operation Tango, another game that I thought was like a solid good. That like I played and really enjoyed. Janet played and really enjoyed. Like, and we talked about it throughout the year, and I think I heard like a few other people talk about it throughout the year, right? And then obviously you have the Fall Guys and Rocket Leagues and like the big successes you see out of PS Plus. Like,
And I
wonder.
you could stack it up too. I mean, as a launch PlayStation Plus, Bug Snacks, right? Which of course did come to PlayStation 4 as well. There is little apples and oranges there, but like Bug Snacks, right? Like, Jesus Christ, you want to talk about a movement in a game that everybody was playing and talking about, and then buying plushies of, and then buying the record, and now it's coming to everything, which I think we're talking about a little later. Like, I get why Lauren can look at it and go, man, maybe we shouldn't have done this, but I still feel that the money, and the article talks about, right, the money PlayStation gave them for PlayStation Plus, let them finish it and get the game done and do all that stuff. Like, I don't think it would have had the same return by any stretch of the imagination if he could have somehow made it to launch without using PlayStation's Plus money.
Yeah, I think, like me and Blessing talked about this on Games Daily, like, but yesterday? Jeez, time is like really weird for today, recording on Thursday. But yeah, like, it's echoing a lot of what y'all have said. Like, it both can be true, right? Like, it is totally possible that in this deal even, and other deals that exist, that PlayStation Plus deals aren't always holistically beneficial for the developer compared to them just selling their game straight out. That is part of like the business of them having to make that decision. And I imagine like they, really think that through, and hopefully they end up picking the right one. And even if, in Lauren Lanning is totally welcome to still feel like, what, looking back, I have regret for it. I feel like we could have done better. Totally fair to have that feeling. Unfortunately, we are not Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, friend of the show, if you're listening, let us know what happens in that other timeline. Like, I feel like it doesn't make quite make sense to, without having me more information on how your games, your franchises perform outside of something like PlayStation Plus, to say, oh, because we had 4 million downloads, we automatically would have had 4 million sales, or even to say that we automatically would have made more money going the sales route. You don't know that. I think there's a lot of layers here too, with like 3 extra months for PS5 consoles to enter market. And while that does help, I mean, even now it's hard to get a PS5. Like,
yeah, like 3 months doesn't do anything, I think, in that scenario.
Yeah, like I think this feels like I don't know, it kind of reads as a little bit like, what are you really mad at kind of energy, just a little bit. I think too, we saw this kind of conversation with Days Gone as well. And again, it doesn't, I guess, help the case that we often see this, unfortunately, with games that aren't quite super critically acclaimed. But one thing I think I would love to see moving forward, but it's probably never really going to happen, is just more transparency with like those deals and how they shake out. And it'd be nice to have, like, as a consumer, more knowledge on like the best ways to support devs, and knowing like when you get certain deals that it's like going to the right places and things like that. Like, I definitely think that's important. And again, like, very totally welcome to feel like, I feel like I made this move incorrectly and that we could have sold more. And, you know, who doesn't believe in the product that they're making? They wouldn't have put it out if they didn't think it was a good game. But yeah, unfortunately, general consensus is skewed a little bit more negative. And I did play it when it came out. I downloaded it, I played it, and I didn't return to it. I was not a fan of it. I did not think it was, you know, one of the best games of that year, which is what I was doing the stream for, to kind of see what the best things were. And that wasn't one of them, at least for me, frankly. So yeah, and I don't think I would have bought it, like, outside of me being having this job. Like, I wouldn't have bought that. There's a lot of things that I download that I would not have bought, of the few things that I do download, which is not all of them.
I played it at Judges Week 2 in the build up to the PlayStation 5 launch or whatever, and I had the same thing where it was like, it was very much a look at how many of these guys we can put on screen, look at the way they interact and the physics and the explosions and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. This isn't a game I want to play, but I'm glad it's there for Oddworld fans and stuff like that. Like, I feel like that's, again, what this game was designed for. And again, I'm trying to look into numbers a bit, and it's not super great, obviously, in terms of like, sometimes trophy lists can give us a little bit of a look into like what's going on. Oddworld's trophy list is not like you beat level 1, you beat level 2. So I'm looking at one here that I think is the first story related can't be missed trophy, and it's captured the train. This is when you beat level 8 though. So it's really not that detailed, but for according to PSN profiles for the overall PSN, only 5.8% of players got that trophy. But again, getting to level 8's deep, but it's talking about how many people stuck around. It's
and hard that's even people that started the game. Like, you know, mentioned how many people redeemed the game and then downloaded it and then didn't touch it. Like, that was me, right? Like, I'm sure if Janet wasn't streaming it, like, that might have been Janet. And I know for so many people, a game that came out on PS Plus in the early PS5 era, a PS5 exclusive game, like, everybody's redeeming that. Like, there's no way I'm not redeeming that. Am I gonna play it? That's a different question. If it's my jam, it is. But like, to go back to the top of the topic, right? Like, how did it go wrong for Oddworld? My answer is just that it didn't hit. Like, I don't think that, like, from hearing you talk about it, Janet, from hearing you talk about it, Greg, from looking at the Metacritic, from like listening to the crickets about it, it seems like the game just wasn't that great, which is how this came down. And like, I think the question I have regarding like the PS Plus launch versus a non-PS Plus launch would be like, hey, if your game is in that like 60 range, if your game isn't something that's going to stand out for people outside of like the core fan base, is it better to release off of PS Plus? Like, would you have gotten more sales that way?
Totally. And that's why I would argue, even though it's the 4 million downloads, I don't think you would have gotten nearly that amount of money. I don't think you would have gotten that many sales. And I think all it can do is bring in new fans because, you know, it's that thing. It didn't hit for us, sure, but somebody played that and was like, oh, this is cool. Maybe they went back and bought the, you know, previously released ones that have been remastered and all that jazz.
Now it's time for PlayStation picks. I'm going to start off with what I'm calling the drop this week. That's the list of games that came out this week. eFootball 2022, that came out for PS5 and PS4 on April 14th. I actually booted it up today. Of course, today, as of the time we're recording, is April 14th. That is Thursday. I booted it up because eFootball, if you remember, is one that people were talking about a lot over the last like half year. It was the Konami game, that used to be Pro Evolution Soccer, turned into eFootball, went free to play, and was terrible. Like, it was getting terrible reviews. And it came out it came out today in 1.0.
I can't stress how terrible this was.
Cannot stress when I say terrible. The game was terrible. But yeah, it came out in 1.0. I didn't even realize it was coming out on consoles. I thought it was just going to be on PC, but came to consoles. I was curious, and so like right before this episode, I downloaded it and played like 5 minutes of it just to see how it controlled. I thought it was going to be like a man, I'm gonna press forward on a character and their animation is gonna be janky. So far, the 5 minutes I played, it didn't seem that bad, but I'm sure like when I get into the weeds, that's where stuff might come out. Or maybe 1.0 is fine. I don't know. I might wait for reviews and see and check it on that one. But that is out and it is free to play. So heads up. Also out today, Thursday, yesterday if you're listening tomorrow. Nobody Saves the World is out on PS5 and PS4. That's Thursday, April 14th. Road 96 is out on PS5 and PS4 April 14th, and then Tape Unveil the Memories is out on PS4 on April 14th. Guys, what did you pick on PlayStation this week? Greg, I'm gonna start with you.
Outrageous that you didn't put Lake on this list. You know what I mean? That's out.
Oh, is that out this week?
Right? Yeah, I think it's the official release date's tomorrow on
Blame
PSN.
Kotaku and Game Informer because I checked
So
both.
you're telling me once again this Zach kid at Kotaku screwed everything up.
You know, he's not weekend editor anymore. He's now like full-time staff. So who's gonna make the list?
Greg, I'm sorry to tell you, the lake was last week. Come on, keep up with the program.
Damn it.
Here you go.
Got him.
Old news.
I wasn't here last week.
Stand your
sorry.
ground, blessing.
Sorry,
Just be
sorry,
like,
Damn.
sorry,
"Just-
sorry.
I'm gonna let it slide this time. You know.
Thank you. Yeah, my dog died. I'm sad. You know?
Okay,
Don't
that's
be
like,
mean to me,
you
everybody.
know what? That's your one. Do you really want to use it now on Lake?
Yeah, I do.
right,
Well,
that's
because it
fair.
builds into what I said at the top of the show.
That's fair.
At the
All
top of the
right.
show, I said a bunch of games that went on exclusive. They came to PlayStation, right? On this list, Nobody Saves the World, right? Formerly an Xbox exclusive. Road 96, a PC and Switch exclusive. And then Lake, another Xbox exclusive that I'm going to include because I want to talk about it or whatever. And I also know Janet has stuff to say about each and every one of these games. So that's exciting. I think that's rad that many came out. And so I want to talk about all three of those games. What I do, I'm just going to talk, but I have another full game I've beaten to talk about. So I want Lake, we can talk about whenever, but I want to include in that conversation, especially because I know Janet beat that one as well, and I know it's a Greg Miller game, and you probably remember me being all about it during previews, and then me having Benjamin and falling asleep trying to play it on Xbox. So I was so tired, but I'm playing on PlayStation right now, and I'm in
Not
love
so
with it.
easy to make those deliveries, huh?
It's not. No, it's just you not off at the wheel. I leave the cat in the car too long. All hell breaks loose. You know what I'm saying? No, but I do want to talk about Replica. Replica is a game that is up my alley. If you remember, I've talked about A Normal Lost Phone before. One of those games you find the phone and then the whole interface is the phone. You have to hack the passwords and get in and do the thing and find the text messages and get it through everything that way. Yada, yada, yada. Replica, as Barrett is showing right now, is that same idea, but it's more nefarious than any of the ones I've played before. Usually you find a Normal Lost Phone or a Normal Lost Phone 2. And you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to play this game and this is going to be super sweet. And I'll find out a nice little thing about what happened to the owner. And maybe it's scary for them, but not for me. Replica isn't that. Replica is the first title of Sony's Guilt trilogy. I'm going to read from the press release over here. Peer into strangers' private lives via the cell phone of a suspected terrorist. A tightly and controlling homeland security of a dystopian government restrains the wielder of a mysterious cell phone to an unknown location. Under coercion by this totalitarian authority, snoop into this device to find and report evidence of its owner's involvement in terrorist activities. If you didn't see it, and Barrett, if you want to toss it back up and you're maybe a podcast listener, not a viewer, the game's got like not 8-bit by any stretch of the imagination, but bit style to it, right? Like it's not a realistic version of the phone. It is a stylized version of it. And the photos in there, almost like Emily is Away. The way Emily is Away is stylized. Have you ever seen our Let's Play of that? Like I said, it's got this terrorism underping to it or whatever. And this is a 3 out of 5 on the kind of funny scale. This is an okay game for me. And it's an okay, not on the good side of the okay. It's an okay, like it was, I played it and I was interested enough, but I feel like with its whole, you know, you're also captured. Like you wake up in the cell as well and they're giving you the phone. They're kind of like, you can have your freedom if you can hack this phone and figure out what this terrorist was up to or whatever. And you go through it and it's like, it's pretty ham-fisted in terms of the storytelling it's using. It moves into at one point the LA noirness that took me out of LA Noire, which is like what I find both good and bad about this game is that they have a government app in there on the phone that's like a to-do list. So it's actually like find X amount of evidence of terrorism, find out, you know, the maiden name of the mom, find out the address, the birthday, and stuff like that. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. I like the objective list. But for one of them, it was, you know, find 8 pieces of terrorism evidence or whatever. And I had gone through this entire phone. And I was like, I don't know what I'm missing. So then it became what I hated in LA Noire, which was like, I need to identify off this ledger who's the bad guy. And I would just go tap, 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 down until I tapped the right name and all hell broke loose. Like it was the same thing here of when I got down to 7 of 8 terrorism evidence things. I went back through everything and clicked on finally something that was like, oh, well, that didn't seem like something that would need to be clicked on to be put into evidence or whatever, but it was, and it did. And then, there's a bunch of different endings to it. I did what, 2, I think it's like maybe 15 endings. I forget if the thing says, but I did 2 of the endings and I was like, all right, like I'm not inclined to play this again. I don't regret my time with it. It was interesting. I do love those little serotonin hits of, oh man, what is this passcode? All right, well, I'm locked out of the phone, but I can see this, that, and the other. So what would I be able to take from the messages to figure out and start running different codes? And a lot of it is looking through the photo library and coming up with, okay, well, this was taken on this date, or that was happening there, or blah, 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 blah. It was interesting, but it was very on the nose about what it was trying to do about this government is evil. These are evil people who have captured you and are making you go through this phone. And this person is probably not evil, or are they? But they're probably, it's like, do you care that they are or not? Like, all right. Like, again, it was fine enough, but I wouldn't recommend it. It was just okay. What have you guys been playing? What Blessing you been playing?
So a few weeks ago during GDC, I got to preview Bugsnax, the Isle of Bigsnax DLC. And I want to talk about that because, I had a fun time with it. If you know Bugsnax, then like, the premise of like you go around this island, you find these little Bugsnax creatures, you catch them, you build out a collection. You're solving puzzles to figure out like how exactly you're supposed to catch these creatures. The DLC is pretty much that exact same gameplay, except you're going to this new part of the island, the Isle of Bigsnax, and over on the Isle of Bigsnax, you have like a bunch of different types of Bugsnax. All of them are new for the most part. Like the first thing you encounter is a bunger, but it's technically different. It's like a bunger royale. Yeah. And so like they find that way to differentiate it. But aside from that, like the other bigger Bugsnax are fairly different from the ones before. And like it is. I actually want to pull from a press release because they released a press release earlier this week talking about how, one, the game is going to other platforms, so it's no longer a PlayStation exclusive. It is going to Switch, Xbox One, Windows 10, etc. And so you have those platforms. You can play it there as well, and that's happening on April 28th. But then they talk about the actual like Isle of Bigsnax. So I'm going to hop into their press release there, where they say Bugsnax free content update. The Isle of Bigsnax will also arrive on all platforms on the same day, being April 28th. Young Horse is also happy to share that new trophies and achievements will be coming to Bugsnax as part of the Isle of Bigsnax update. And Greg Miller takes credit for the trophies, even though the Bugsnax developers deny it.
That's not true. They're trying to downplay my involvement. Don't listen to him, everybody.
I mean, I saw on Twitter, it seems like they're very adamant that like Greg Miller didn't really have much to do with these trophies.
I know, and it's a very sad state of affairs. So everybody can go yell at Phil or from Young Horses and let him know this is he's trying to rewrite history, and the record does show. There's articles. Bless, you want me to go get the articles that talk about me?
You can find the articles, but like maybe the articles just have bad. Are you the source of the articles? Like, are they sourcing you? Because I think that might be the thing.
You know what? No, don't. This is neither him nor there. All right, just keep going.
The Isle of Bigsnax's main campaign includes 3 to 4 hours of new story content with Yuri Lowenthal, Casey Mongilo, Deborah Wilson, and Haviland Stillwell returning to voice their respective Grumpuses and the new exciting Bugsnax and mysteries to discover. Players will find even more to do on the main island of the original game with new mail quests from Grumpuses to complete, hats to acquire for your favorite snacks, and your very own hut to decorate and call home. And it is pretty much what it is, right? Like the stuff they talk about. Playing the demo, I only played the demo for about like 45 minutes, and it was the new content over on the Isle of Bigsnax, right? It was me figuring out how to catch new Bugsnax. It was me figuring out how to like solve puzzles, get to new parts of the island. It is the gameplay that you know and love from Bugsnax, but just more of it. And like they have new mechanics that they've thrown in there, right? It's all the same tool set.
I don't mean interrupt. Can you read the headline on this Push Square article? Barrett's showing. Barry, you want to scroll back? What's that headline say?
The headline says Greg Miller demands Bugsnax trophies. Or Greg Miller demands Bugsnax DLC trophies and gets them.
Thank you.
Barrett, can you scroll? I need to see the article because I want to make sure. I want to see who they're sourcing this article.
So the PlayStation Gamers, I did this for you. I assume is a quote from Greg. One of the very few noteworthy reveals from last week's State of Play presentation was that Bugsnax is being treated to a free expansion titled the Isle of Bigsnax at some point next year. It will add a new biome, big Bugsnax, hats, home customization, and now trophies, thanks to the efforts of KindaFunny's Greg Miller on Twitter, as well as taking care of of a newborn, Miller has asked developer Young Horses whether or not trophies would be a part of the DLC. The team's Twitter account responded, "Not this time, sorry, Greg." At which point he offered up his own services to create a trophy list for them. This conversation spiraled enough to where Young Horses co-founder and president Philip Tibetowski, is how I'm going to say that, explained how the team had basically accepted it had to implement trophies because of Greg. We saw these tweets, and about 20 minutes later in team chat, the sentiment was, "I guess we're adding new trophies." Clearly happy with his work, Miller tweeted, "PlayStation gamers, I did this for you. I won't rest until I annoy every developer into sighing and admitting a lot of us care about trophies. Blessing, get dunked on."
I mean, I can't argue with that. I stand corrected. Greg Miller, I apologize.
Really needed this win after the whole lake thing.
Oh, fuck off, Janet. They don't even like you in the show. Eric Miller doesn't even reference you.
So how has that ever stopped me from doing any of the things I do?
But yeah, Eric Miller's been out to get you for years.
The Bugsnax DLC, all in all, is more Bugsnax. Like the Isle of Big Snacks again is like finding out ways to catch them.
Oh,
they're pretty big. They're pretty big.
Are they, on a scale of like alpha Pokemon to Gigantamax Pokemon, how big are the snacks?
Alpha Pokemon. They're not like Gigantamax.
Okay.
No, at least I didn't run into it during my preview time. There might be a Gigantamax Bugsnax, but not in my time playing. But yeah, like it's again the same tool set. All the stuff they already have are the tools you're going to use to catch the new Big Snacks, and they do find cool new ways to use some of those same tools. Like the one that stuck out to me was like there are doors that'll block your path, and the doors are essentially like these big mazes, and so you can pick out like the bug you have that is like in like the little ball that you like do like the laser pointer. And like it'll follow that. You can basically like guide that thing through the maze, and then once you get to the end of the maze, that'll then unlock the door, right? Like they find things like that to like take the tools you have and then find new ways to use them. And so like if go for it.
Never mind. I was gonna ask how long it was, but I see here it's the 3 to 4 hours.
3 to 4 hours.
Did you do any of the in your time with it? Did you do any of like the home decoration? Like, do you have any idea like how you source those materials or like how that whole operates?
I didn't get to play any of that. They did show that stuff off while I was there. They basically the thing that stuck out to me specifically was the snacks with like hats on them. Basically what that is like it's almost like Pokemon Shinies in a way where you'll just be in the world and you'll see a bunger, right? And it'll just be wearing a hat. And you're like, oh shit, that's like the unique bunger, right? But it's like it's rare. And once you catch it, you then get access to that hat that you can then put on on your Bugsnax. What's up, Greg?
So I didn't get to play at the GDC, but I did the demo that was basically what you played through. And so, Janet, the way you're sourcing the things for your hut to build out your hut is the new letter quests. And so basically at your house now, you have a mailbox and you get letters from the other Grumpuses that are doing very similar things of catch me this many bugs, this many Selly sticks or whatever it's going to be. And then you do that and you get an item from them, like the chandelier, like a chandelier, but it's chandelier or whatever. And like, apparently there's like 100 of them or some shit like that. And so there's going to be a ton, and it is based on how you did it in the game. So I'm very interested I'm going to start with my end game save, you know what I mean? Or I guess right before end games, because it just starts you before the end of the game. And I wonder if I'm going to get like 57 things, or if it'll be 1-for-1 returning them and stuff like that. And you'll go through and get them that way, and you build up the hut that way.
Cool. Yeah, and I think the hut is like a cute idea. They went through and they showed me all the different iterations of like these are all the different looks you can have for your hut, and it's like really cute stuff. It's not super in depth. It's not like Animal Crossing or whatever, but it is like, hey, you can make your wallpaper this. You can make this piece of art on your wall like this. You can make your bed like this, right? And it is like a cool like extra incentive as you're playing the game to do these extra quests. And part of me wishes that stuff was there during my original playthrough, because I don't know if I'm gonna want to actually go back and like do all this stuff to get just to like customize the house. Like it doesn't seem like it's all that deep for it.
That's my big thing too, Bless, of taking away of like 3 to 4 hours of new story content, right? I'm definitely gonna do that. I'm gonna finish this campaign. I loved playing Bugsnax before. I think it's really cool how they're using tools and things we already know to fuck around with it. Also, they added fast traveling, which is great and needed.
Yeah.
Thank God. Awesome. Yeah.
I like all that. I'm gonna do that. But yeah, I really do. It's 3 new trophies, right? And it's finish the new island, deck out the hut, collect 10 new hats. I'll definitely get to 10 hats. I'll definitely finish the new island. But to deck out the hut, like if that is collect everything, I don't know if I'm gonna sit there, right, for X amount of hours.
I don't think it's gonna be that. I think it'll be like apply one of each type of item on the hut. So? I gotta imagine.
Okay.
But yeah, like
Maybe
it seems
I'll do
cool.
that.
If you're somebody who like hasn't played Bugsnax, I think this update is gonna be
This is gonna be a
excellent
great
for
time
you.
to start. Yeah.
Because I like reading through it and them showing it to me, I was like, man, I wish this stuff was here at launch because
Yeah.
I would have loved all this stuff. But like if you're somebody that hasn't played it or is gonna jump into it on an Xbox or another platform, 100%, like that's gonna be super dope for you. And then for people that are craving more Bugsnax or like that gameplay and 100% of it and are looking to 130% it, yeah, I think this is gonna be awesome for you because it is gonna be more of the gameplay that you love in like a weird larger form. And so that was my time. I thought the demo was cool. I don't know if I'm gonna play it yet. You know, like I don't know if I'm necessarily in the mood for more Bugsnax. Yeah, I don't know. Like, we're in a new season, Greg. It's backlog season, and so like I'm trying to make time to go back and play games like Tunic or play Pokemon Arceus or like even Mass Effect 2. I started that towards the beginning of the year, and I only got like 7 hours in. I want to pick up that save, but
Mass
like
Effect 2, that's what you gotta go do.
Yeah, I mean, people say it's a very important game, and so far I'm digging it a lot. Like, it seems like it's really good. But yeah, but this comes out again. I think it's April 20th, April 28th. So that's about 2 weeks from now. And if I remember correctly, right, according to the Blessing Super Fun game release calendar, I believe there's a couple other games coming out around that time, right? I think you got Switch Sports and like a couple other ones. And so we'll see. Like, Bugsnax isn't really taking priority for me, like with the DLC. Like, I think for the people that want more of it, I think it's going to be good. And if I find time, I might check it out, but I'm not aching for it necessarily.
Janet,
What are you going to jump into it, Greg?
You want to? Oh, me? Yeah, I'm all about it. I loved Bugsnax. I loved Bugsnax enough that and by the way, of course, Papa Agenda does marketing and stuff for it. But again, like I've always said, my wife and her company do a bunch of games I don't give a flying fuck about. So and Nobody Saves the World's another one they did. So trust me, I'm not afraid to talk shit about their games. But a Bugsnax base, I've thought about playing the PS4 version of because I had such a fun time platinuming it to get another platinum on it. Now this was pre-Benjamin, no way. I would probably never do that now. But a new reason to jump on there and go for sure. I'm all about it. And Janet, I assume you're in.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna at least check it out. I put the Strabby plush that I got from Gamer, I think, on my head. So if you're listening, that's what I just did in the last 10 seconds. But yeah, I mean, I really liked the game a lot, and I never platinumed it. So that's the number one thing that I don't know if I will end up platinuming or necessarily even finishing the DLC, but I feel like this is a good excuse to go back where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll jump in, knock out some of the trophies, see how close we can get to the platinum, check out how big the snacks are. I like the decor stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I'm at least going to spend a little bit of time with it. I don't know that I'll like see it through because just historically, I don't do a lot of stuff with DLC. Those spoilers for my next thing because it is a DLC. But yeah, and I think this is honestly really smart on their part because like the DLC and free update angle gets people talking about it again. And then people are also coming in on new platforms to have like a fresh perspective. So you kind of get to get the best of both worlds. Like even if you've already talked about it and played it, like, like here we're talking about it now again, because it's like, oh, it's new again, kind of, and it has this nice refresh to it. So that's cool. And I'm excited to see how it is too with the quality of life stuff of the fast travel is going to be a real big deal.
Key.
So
also the DLC being free is dope as hell.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll at least check it out, see what kind of snacks are there. For me though, I just checked out the Outer Wilds DLC. My friend and moderator, Eddie, aka Played Forward, was like, hey, like I'm down to do the DLC with you. I've never done it. Outer Wilds is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, let's stream it together. So he came to my apartment yesterday and we played it yesterday on stream for like 4 hours. And I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. It's interesting because it's, it's definitely more Outer Wilds. So it's the same like of you're exploring, you got to figure things out. You have some info in your ship that kind of logs it. Like those components remain, but you're not doing as much flying around in the ship. You don't have, at least at this point, early on into the DLC, I don't know what happens later because spoilers, you don't have like you still have your translator, but it can't read the language that you're encountering now. So it's a lot more isolated, which is convenient because you don't have to worry about like ping-ponging between different planets, which was a lot of Outer Wilds. The base game is figuring out like, am I done here? Should I leave? I'll just have to come back later. Like, since you're just on this one singular, you kind of jump into an anomaly is how it starts off. Like you do some scanning and then you find how to get there and you end up in this new planet or environment. And the puzzle solving is a lot like different in terms of how they convey the story to you. So in Outer Wilds, the base game, it's a lot of, again, using your translator and scanning. So you'll see all these swirls and you'll read like, conversations between like 8 people who have like names that I have a hard time remembering. While this is like instead, and again, this is technically light spoilers in the sense of it's the first few things you do. So, I get if you want to go in cold, they skip this part or whatever. But instead of like finding like old text, you're finding like old film reels. So mechanically it's the same. You're kind of shuffling things around, because in the base game you're getting a scroll, you put it into the wall, and then you scan the wall for the text. Here you find like a slide projector thingy, like the slides, you put it into a projector and then you click through them, which sounds like, oh, okay, so you're just kind of scrubbing like something old and making it slightly different. But it really does change things up, because having like that information visually, I find so much easier to digest than like out of order conversations pontificating about scientific anomalies and like time and space, where they're like, I think the blank with the blank on the other planet, and then my ship's like, oh, log updated. I'm like, what did I learn? And I still have like those moments a little bit here where I'll see something and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to piece together what this visual means, but I do think it's a lot more digestible. So I think if you're someone that liked Outer Wilds, like, it's worth checking out. It seems interesting. The DLC is like 8 hours. I'm definitely going to finish it, but I'm just going to wait for like Eddie to come back and us to play it together. But yeah, I enjoyed my time with it. I think a little bit more than how the base game is structured, just because I find it a little bit easier to digest. Obviously, it helps that Eddie's playing it with me and he's like really good at games like that. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It hasn't gotten really scary yet. Everyone says it gets super scary, and I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm excited to find out.
Dude, base Outer Wilds gets scary. Like, they have like that one planet with the things.
But this gets way scarier, according to people. Because in base Outer Wilds, the scariest thing was like there's a big fish with like scary eyes and teeth. And I get scared over anything because I'm basically no better than a cat. So literally I'll be walking in like a sandy area in base Outer Wilds, and then I turn, there's a cactus, and I'm like, oh shit, it came out of nowhere. Like my suit's like bleeding now because I punctured myself on it. So I'm very skittish that way. But everyone says that if you thought the base game was a little scary, this one's like legit dabbling into horror. Again, nothing like that has happened in my playthrough yet, about 4 hours in, but everyone says it's around the corner. So more on that when I finish it.
Maybe that'll be a backlog season joint. Yeah, I gotta finally go back and beat Outer Wilds again. I've tried it like 8 different times, and like hearing you talk about it kind of has me craving it a little bit. It's weird because like whenever I am playing it, I am like, man, where am I going? What am I doing? What am I trying to understand here? And like I always fall off after like 3 or 4 hours. But now I'm like, man, maybe if I just pick up that 4-hour save, I just do another 4 hours and I finally make it.
The hard thing is like remembering what you're doing. And I do think if you stream it, Twitch chat's going to be like invaluable because having that little bit of assistance. And like overall, I think I like the game all right. Like I'm definitely not in love with it. Like I wouldn't put it in like a list of favorites or anything, but I enjoyed having gone through it because I feel like I learned a lot about that certain style of storytelling, just getting a sense of like, this is a really beloved game. What do people appreciate in it? Also kind of just getting a little bit more used to playing in a genre that has a little bit less hand-holding in it. Learning how to puzzle solve in that way. And then genuinely, there are some really weird and interesting things. And I will say Outer Wilds really hits when you're like doing well at it. And that's kind of the challenge. Like it doesn't provide a lot of support if you're not already like down to do the mental work and able to do the mental work. Like if you get stuck, there's not a lot that helps you. And that's kind of one of my bigger like gripes with certain elements of the game where like it's so unexplained to you that I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know how I'm supposed to have known. But when it clicks and you're figuring things out, it is very satisfying to like make progress in that game. And like the way it kind of logs all the information, like it's, I don't want to say it's unmatched because it sounds so dramatic, but it is very satisfying to figure stuff out for yourself when you can. So yeah, I think it's worth playing, and I think you'd find something to enjoy and appreciate during your time with it, even if you don't ever fall in love with it.
Here's the thing, Blessing. I hear what you're saying, but what if instead of doing that, we went and got really into No Man's Sky? Because for the
once
way
a year, you like one of you pitches this big project, and then it doesn't end up
Kevin
happening.
Usually, it's usually me and Kevin, where it's like I enjoyed No Man's Sky for what it was at launch and fell off, and then they do all these updates, and I always come back, and then it's always the base building that gets me to go, I don't want to do this anymore. But I know that there's a mode where I don't have to do that, and they just dropped that outlaw stuff. Do you see all this?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see all this, yeah.
Their new
You want to be a pirate?
Yeah, pirates and mercenaries and shit, and just the trailer looks so cool. Like again, like I know that I'd be hours away from doing that, but it seems so. It was always so chill to run around and collect helium or whatever the fuck it was. I'm breaking down rocks and getting silver and gold and crap.
See, that's the thing that hinders me.
Because I can't read, but I'm picking it up and I'm having a good time doing it.
Yeah, exactly right. I have no idea what this guy's trying to fucking tell me right now, but this is cool enough, I guess.
The thing that hindered me a few years ago when I tried out No Man's Sky for the first time, because I had the same moment where I forget what update it was, but it was some big update where it was like the tweet with like just one word for what the update's called, and then all the emojis to them like talking about all the different features. It was one of them ones. It was like No Man's Sky Next, I think.
I think it was the one with the water elements, maybe.
I mean, they do that for all the updates, but like I think the one I'm thinking of specifically might have been Next, and I was like, damn, this looks like it's gonna be the one. Like I need to jump into it here. And I'm not the survival like crafting, like go through all like look for all these materials and collect them, and then turn on that stuff and all that type of player. But like No Man's Sky, I think if I was to get into that game, into that type of game, I think No Man's Sky would be the one, because with each update, I watched the trailer and I'm like, damn, this looks fun. This looks cool. I like the idea of exploring like an infinite space and like hanging out with friends and all this stuff. And like Outlaws adding in, I assume there's combat, right? Like if it is about pirates and like
there's combat,
all that stuff, right?
I've been there for a while now.
I'm down to get into that. Like that sounds like a fun time. So if you do it,
here we go.
I'll download it.
Downloading the PS4 version. God damn it. No PlayStation. I don't want that.
Is there not a PS5 version?
It says right there. There's
Oh, you know what? I went through this with Kevin a few months ago, where I was like, oh yeah, let me download No Man's Sky, and I looked into my PS5 and I saw that there wasn't yet there wasn't No Man's Sky there, and then I realized they have a PS4 physical No Man's Sky disc for some reason. And so if there is a PS5 version, I guess I probably don't have it because of that.
Yeah, it's one of those where I had to click on to get the free PS5 digital upgrade.
Maybe I'll just buy it.
It's just not smart enough to do. And there it goes. Now it's downloading.
Before
we get to the post show, I do want to make good on this. These unexclusive games, right? So Lake, formerly an Xbox One, I'm playing. I'm enjoying as I knew I would. You just drive around, you deliver mail, you forge relationships with people. I'm having a great time. Janet, this gets your thumbs up, right?
Yeah, this is awesome. Definitely a game that like it wasn't on my top 10 of the year, but I really, really enjoyed it. It's like a solid, like good game.
Yeah. Then Road 96. This is that one that's got a million different branching stories and dialogues and whatever.
Procedural generated narrative game.
Right.
Yes.
I was super excited for this when it came. I played it on Switch and it ran like dog shit on Switch.
Yes.
And so I bounced early. You, Janet, played it on PC, right? You had a great time with it.
Yeah, I still haven't finished it yet. I do want to go back. I know Blessing probably doesn't believe that I will go back and finish it, but I will after we do Uncharted and that other Dark Pictures thing. I will send you the credits when they roll, assuming they roll. I hope they do. Yeah, I love this. Procedurally generated road trip game, like Bless mentioned. And, this gets tossed, and I kind of mentioned this on KFGD, like praising this game. It gets tossed around a lot, like, your decisions feel really weighted, but they genuinely do. Like, they put you in some cool moral grays that also aren't like hyperly dramatic, which is also like a trope that I think a lot of story games fall into, which I love drama as well. Like I'm not against like over the top stuff, but it feels really real, really grounded. And just like in, real life, crazy shit happens during this road trip where I'm like, oh my God, what do I mean, I remember at one point, like, I think someone's driving me, like they pick me up as a hitchhiker, but they like have a gun on them. And I'm kind of like, man, like, what do I do here? Like, I kind of need to get out, but then I need to make progress. So it's just fun, like interesting back and forth as you like kind of go through. And I'm trying to remember if you play as different characters throughout. I think you do. And there's like different branches. And it's just honestly one of the best story games I've played in a while. And the only reason I didn't praise it more last year is just because I never got around to finishing it, unfortunately, since it was on PC. I just didn't sit down to finish it. But I'm so excited to see it through, and I know a lot of people that really love this game. So yeah, Road 96, go play it.
I had like a similar thing. The reason I played a little bit of it on PC, the reason I didn't get too far is because I didn't feel like playing it on PC. I was like, okay, I need this on a console because I want to spend some time in this thing. But for like the couple of hours that I played, I was very impressed with it. Like in terms of like the tone, it reminded me a little bit of like a Life is Strange in terms of like how much of it was narrative and how much of it was like dialogue driven and like the art style. Like it kind of brought me back to that a bit. But yeah, like as I was playing, I was like, damn, how much this is procedurally generated, because this feels like it's moving along the story in a very impressive way, in a way that like had me curious to like walk around and explore and talk to different characters and figure out like how to move on to the next thing. And so I want to check this out now that it's on PlayStation 5.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to it because obviously if Janet likes it, I'll like it. With the exception of another game, Nobody Saves the World. Now, this was Blessing and I. We bounced on this earlier, but Janet, you love Nobody Saves the World, right?
Yeah, I played through it to completion. I reviewed it for my outlet, Pen to Pixels. I co-opted it with Isaiah. It's one of the few successful co-op experiences we've had where we both really liked it. I do think there's some difficulty spikes in there where if you're playing alone, that might be kind of a pain, but I really love the mix and match of abilities. You can have like, a zombie mermaid who shoots arrows, or a rat that can do magic, and like just crazy stuff. I think too, the way it kind of forces you to spend time with each of the forms to like kind of complete quests is really satisfying. I think they do a good job gamifying the grind and kind of hiding it by making it go so quickly, because you have like these small things to do that you're kind of always making progress on something as you're playing. And you know, you just go through all these different dungeons. My only gripes, really, like one of my biggest ones I remember was, well, there's no local split screen. You do have to be online. And then sometimes traversing the overworld can be a little bit of a pain, because like occasionally you have to go like, yeah, you move a little slow, and then there's enemies all over the place, so you kind of have to fight a lot to get, and it's like, I just want to get from point A to point B, and I don't want to have, you know, go through the slog of it. But other than that, I had such a fun time playing through this. Yeah, I really like it. I know a lot of people that are not as hot on it, and honestly, I don't understand it, because I think it's freaking awesome. It's one of my favorite games of the year.
I still love the art style. Like as Barry was showing the footage, I was like, damn, this like that was the thing that brought me in for so many hours. I must have played like 10ish hours, and I made it at least over halfway through the game. And it wasn't until like the game has increments where it's kind of done in chapters in a way where it is like, hey, do these 2 big things, cool, now do these other 2 big things. And I got past one of the humps, and then it asked me to do the other things, and I was like, no, man, I just can't. You can't put me through this again. And I think part of it was, I think I feel the opposite way about the, like, its system of telling you to do these smaller things in order to get extra XP, because like they force you to do that stuff, right? Like that is the only way.
The other characters, or abilities.
Like you have to play as the other characters, and you also have to use like specific abilities with those other characters, and you have to equip like certain upgrades with those characters too, which for me like took all the freedom and all of the choice out of it, which I didn't particularly like. And then that combined with like a lot of the systems of like, I forget what they're called. Basically, like some enemies will be armored, and you need certain elements to break that armor and continue to fight them. Like there was too much. I felt like that was in my way in terms of obstacles and the things that were getting in the way of how I wanted to play, that kind of brought me out of it. But it's still a game that I would say is a good game, that like if you like Drinkbox, that like you should definitely check out, because I think gameplay is fun enough, like the art style is dope as hell, and I think the story there is fun, and the writing I think is really funny too.
I think so too.
Over and over again, right? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just really fast, like, and you know, and you always have to like make a decision when you're doing a review on like, do you want to do like half alone, all of it alone, then do it again with co-op? Like I just went all co-op on it, and I was very like transparent about like how that may or may not like, you know, color my opinion or change my opinion based on other people. I do think that's why it benefits so well from co-op too, because it speeds up a lot of that stuff, because you can like divide and conquer as you go through those things, where like me and Isaiah would like decide, okay, what do we need to upgrade? We need this thing, you know, we need to like, I'm just kind of making it up because I don't remember all the specifics. Okay, we need the monk to do a certain amount of like holy damage, but then we also need this other element. I'm like, okay, cool. You'll be that, I'll be this. Okay, we need 2 different, we need like a red attack and a green attack to break the shield. Okay, I'll spec my character. It is a lot of respecing those, which can kind of slow things down, but I'm like, I'll spec my character with like that, and then you'll have the other one, and then we'll tag team it, and then again, helps with the revives. Like I think because the game strength and what it's trying to show you that it has to offer is the synergy between the characters and the different abilities that you can spec with them, it fits so well when you do it in co-op, because you're like not just playing off of your own character's base stats and their additional abilities that you're specking, but you're also playing off the partner that you have, who might have like different skills or abilities. So again, that's not to say that I think it doesn't stand on its own alone, but I really loved it as a co-op experience. And if nothing else, I think it's more fun co-op than it is alone.
I would push back saying if you're a fan of Drinkbox, you should check this out. Like Guacamelee 1 and 2 are 2 of my favorite games. Guacamelee 2 specifically being one of my favorite games from last gen. I was really disappointed by this. I do appreciate of like you know, hearing Janet and hearing the folks over at MinMax talk about this game a lot, of like the different type of like strategy that you have to kind of like think with tackling situations. I just feel like the moment to moment gameplay just feels so passive in a way that it feels so antithetical to what Guacamelee was. Again, like when we were reviewing this a few months back, like, you know, I applaud them for wanting to do something different and get like, you know, stretch their legs a little bit and not feel, you know, encumbered by the kind of Metroidvania games that they had been doing so far. But it really wasn't for me, and I was really disappointed by that.
Yeah, and when I say like if you're a fan of Drinkbox, I more so mean like for the art style and the humor. I think that stuff is like very Drinkbox, and if you really like that stuff, I think the game has stuff to offer for you. But like, yeah, I also play Guacamelee and love Guacamelee. In this game, I didn't like nearly as much as Guacamelee.
Yeah, I was there too. Where my takeaway was with Barrett, where the combat just didn't grab me, and I felt that I thought it felt like a mobile game, and I don't mean that as a knock to all mobile games, but one that was a game that didn't demand my full attention, which is why, honestly, it's more interesting for me that it's also on Switch now, where I could see that being a thing where if I'm watching a show or a TV or whatever, show or a TV show or a movie or something like that, and I wanted a second screen game just to be going through, I could see it there, but.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it again on Switch, because that was something that I was like, I could see myself playing it on Switch, and while Alyssa's watching something and being more engaged with that, while mindlessly fighting a bunch of things in a sewer as a rat. Like, maybe it'll vibe with me a little bit more, but yeah, and at least with like writing and stuff, I really did not vibe with it nearly as much as I did Guacamole Melee, but that's just me.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you vibed with this episode of PS I Love You XOXO. Remember, we're not done yet. We are going to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, where we're going to do a post show that you can tune into. You could also be watching it live. You could have also gotten the show ad free, all on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. We're going to be answering a question actually written in over there from Hero Roku, but that is all locked in on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. Of course, you can get this show for free each and every Friday. It's brand new day. youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, roosterteeth.com, and podcast services around the globe. If that isn't good enough for you and you want to go an extra mile for us, why, of course, go to kindoffunny.com/store, where there's a bunch of new shirts, including that Scarpino shirt, including this Kinda Funny sweatshirt. Janet, no, you're usually helpful. Not today. Blessing. Yeah,
why am I catching you straight for no reason?
Because you're not wearing a Kinda Funny merch shirt. Blessing's wearing a Kinda Funny merch shirt.
What is that? What merch is that?
It's the Kinda Funny Chris Anka, Andy Cortez crossover VR shirt we did.
Yeah, no, I don't have that. I have an Iron Galaxy shirt. So even worse, it's just not us. It's just someone else.
Buy Iron Galaxy games while you're at
Galaxy,
it too.
Though.
Get ready for that new wrestling
Iron Galaxy shirt. I have all
the wrestling one they're doing.
Well, Iron Galaxy's in Chicago. So yeah. I had a
Dave Ling works there. Of course, like I said, youtube.com, blah, 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 all that stuff. Patreon. Oh, Kinda Funny. Use the Epic creator code Kinda Funny when you're buying games on the Epic Game Store, or when you're playing Fortnite, Rocket League, or that there Fall Guys. Like I said, we have a post show to do, but if you're not coming with us, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.